That's my cue to hit the big button. All right, we're going to roll it in 5, 4, 3. Welcome to the Ham Radio Workbench podcast, your bi-weekly deep dive on technical topics of interest to the radio amateur. Well, on today's show, we have two special guests. We're going to talk all about the shore station KPH and the Enigma Contest. And our guests today are Richard W6AWO and Kevin KM6WUM. And for those of you who are new to the show, we're glad that you're here. We have over 250 episodes in our back catalog. And you can find out more about the show at our webpage, hamradioworkbench.com. You can also talk with us and our other listeners on our Facebook group, Ham Radio Workbench. And you can also come over to our Discord. You can get the Never Expires Discord link from our website. And you can also talk to us live and direct on the Brandmeister DMR Talk group 31075 and the Allstar node 55915. Well, on the show, as I mentioned, we have Richard and Kevin to talk about the shore station KPH and how it was used in the commercial world and also how it's being used in the amateur world and some of the really cool activities that take place there. And for a little bit of background, Richard has a really fascinating background. Richard's been interested in radio since he was a kid and even got his very first SWLing license from Popular Electronics magazine, for those of you who might remember that. So he started out with the call sign WPE2VT, which was issued by the magazine. So that was pretty cool in the good old days of shortwave listening. He was first licensed in 1958 with the amateur call sign WV2BJK, upgraded to general as WA2BJK, and when he moved to San Francisco in 1967, he got his extra class license and his first class radio telephone and his second class radio telephone license, and is currently W6AWO. And just a little bit of Richard's background. Back in 1977, he joined Greenpeace, the environmental organization. He had a really fascinating job there, and he was building the first SSB coast station used by Greenpeace to communicate with ships. And also he became kind of the broad technical guy, doing a lot of special services kind of projects. We might find out a little bit more about that. And with that, I'd like to welcome Richard to the show. Hey, Richard.
Well, thanks so much. It's really my pleasure to be with you.
You know, when I was trying to read some of your bio at first, and I thought, man, there's too many interesting things here. It's probably better to hear it directly from you, so we may get into that. And also today we have Kevin KM6WUM. Kevin was first licensed about 7 years ago, and his big interest in amateur radio includes satellite tracking and antenna building. And you may recall, if you're an active listener, that we had Kevin on the show back in 2021, episode 120, where we asked him to come on and talk about his satellite tracking controller that he built. So we'll learn more about that. It's not a surprise that professionally, Kevin is a industrial controls system integrator, so it makes perfect sense that he works on a project like the antenna controller. So we'll probably get a bit of an update on that. He also does 3D modeling, 3D printing, and a variety of software hardware projects. And he's also a licensed pilot and sailor on the San Francisco Bay when he gets a chance. And one of the reasons that Kevin's here is because he introduced us to Richard. And when we were thinking about doing this topic, Kevin reached out and said, hey, I can get Richard, and he'd be a great guest. So, Kevin, it's so nice to chat with you again. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Delighted to be here. Thanks.
And thanks for being Richard's booking agent.
You're welcome. Yeah.
That's great. So in addition to Richard and Kevin today, we have Mark N6MTS. Hello, Mark.
Hello. How y'all doing?
Doing great. Doing great. How are things in the Central Coast?
Beautiful as ever. Weather is wonderful. It's finally starting to feel like fall instead of summer. You know, I can walk around without burning. It's what it boils down to.
Oh, that sounds great. Excellent. And also we have Vince VE6LK up in Alberta. Hello, Vince.
Good evening, noon, y'all. How's it?
It's good. Alberta good?
Alberta's fine. Unseasonably warm.
Mm.
It was the 1st of October when we saw the very first instance of termination dust on top of the Rockies. Termination dust is snow, for all of those of you who are unfamiliar with it, because it signifies really the end of summer. But October 1st, I've never seen it that late in my life. And it continues to be very warm. We were recording this show on the 23rd of October, and today it hit 60 degrees where I am. It's still cycling weather.
I assume you mean Fahrenheit.
Yes, 63 minutes.
Just thought I'd check.
Yeah.
60°. That's
Yeah, that'd be a little
even
toasty.
hotter than Arizona.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's a dry heat.
Yeah, that's right.
So on today's show, we also have Thomas K4SWL. Hello, Thomas.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Am I doing well?
You're doing good. How are things in North Carolina?
Things are going well. I've been all over North Carolina. I should be on the coast of North Carolina right now, but I've spent the last a better part of 2 weeks with my daughters during fall break. My wife and I stayed at a family property in Raleigh for quite a while, and during fall break, though, we all passed around the same wonderful respiratory bug. And so, like, I was second. My daughter Neva was first. I was second. My daughter Sylvie and my wife Heather, they were the last to go. And so we decided to cancel the idea of going out to the Outer Banks until we feel a little bit better. So we'll probably do that in, like, I don't know, a few weeks or something. But the weather here has been spectacular. I feel great. I've gotten to go out and do a lot of POTA. I'll talk a little bit about that. But it's gorgeous outside.
Very nice. Well, it's turned beautiful here in Oregon. It's raining. Actually, the heat's gone. Then it was beautiful for a day, and then it started raining. So everybody's like, "Oh, thank goodness, it's back to the normal." So it's quite nice here. Actually, it's not raining that much yet.
Northwest is the Pacific Northwest again.
It is. It is. Yeah. So what we're going to do here is do a bit of a roundtable of what's on your workbench, and of course, we're going to start with our guests. And Richard, you're going to get to go first. So what you got on the workbench?
Well, I'm afraid very little in the way of amateur radio, but also the transmitter engineer for our local community radio station here in Point Reyes Station. And we're building a new site, so I have a broadcast transmitter on the bench giving it the test before we bring it up to the site. You always want to find out the problem before you get there. So yes. That's on the bench, and it's working just fine. It's a 500-watt transmitter, and having been in the game for a while, it's amazing how the size has decreased and the capability has increased for these units. And it's almost boring. You kind of plug it in, and away it goes.
Is this an FM station or AM?
Yes. Sorry,
FM.
It is an
Okay.
FM. Yep. And we've been on the air for a little over 25 years now.
Oh, wow.
And then the other stuff is we have an extensive network of civilian first responders here in West Marin. And as a matter of fact, I look out the window and I can see the San Andreas Fault, or the Tamales Bay, under which the San Andreas Fault runs. So the big joke at the broadcast conventions is my studio is on the North American plate and my transmitter's on the Pacific plate, and every 1,000 years or so I have to realign the antennas, but some people think it's funny and some just stare blankly at that. But because of those things, and we're pretty isolated here, we have an extensive network of civilian first responders and an extensive communication system to support them. It's all on GMRS, which I'm sure y'all know is a UHF system. We've got about 400 radios in the field and a total of 10 repeaters. So even though I'm retired, it keeps me very busy with all those things going on, plus the KPH project.
Boy, I'll say, maybe you're that example of, if you want something done, give it to the busy guy. So I got a question about your broadcast transmission. Is that locally originated content, or is there like network feed of content, or what do you put on the station?
It's predominantly local. There's a staff of about 80 or so. It varies, 80 to 90 volunteer programmers. And we do have an automation system as well. and some syndicated programs are picked up and broadcast, but it's very, very local. It's really an integral part of the town and the community, and that's what is most rewarding about it.
Oh, that's really pretty cool. And is the transmitter that you're replacing, was it 500 watts, or is this a step up in
This
any
is
performance?
a new installation. We're probably only going to be running maybe 100 watts or so on the first iteration, but I have plans, plans for world domination. So I wanted to
You have to
get
steeple your fingers like this when you say that.
That's right. You understand. And so I wanted to size the transmitter so that we would be able to accommodate that without having to buy new equipment.
Do you have
Oh,
like
wow.
an allowable range that you can, like, what's your top end?
Well, the power, well, it's an interesting thing. For the main transmitters and the two translators, that is stipulated in the license, of course, and it's about 340 watts ERP for the main transmitter. Translators are only 10 watts. The one that I'm putting together is a booster, which is an on-frequency transmitter. And I was interested to see that the construction permit basically says, well, adjust your power to whatever you want to get the contour that you need. So I thought, oh, okay, that works for me.
And every week you turn the little screw another quarter of a turn.
Well, I was hoping you wouldn't bring that up, but yes, that's
Shh, George.
Oh, sorry.
Don't give it away. How? Okay, we're going down a rat hole already. How does that work? The booster, is it fed through an STL link, or is it receiving the same frequency and trying to retransmit on the same frequency?
Yeah, well, you put your finger on it. Of course, you really can't do that. So yes, it's fed by an STL, and in this case, that'll be over the internet.
Okay.
And the trick, obviously, you're going to have a point in the contour that the booster and the main transmitter are going to interfere at some point.
Yeah.
So the trick is to put that contour where nobody lives or very few people live.
That's the way you're avoiding the simulcast problem?
Yeah, that's right. And
Okay.
so this is a very rural area. It's almost ideal for that kind of application. We should be able to put it out where the cows live for the most part, and not interfere with our main town, which is the town of Tamales that we're aiming at.
So what's an STL?
Sorry, a studio transmitter link.
Perfect, thank you. And what does a translator do?
That is just as we were talking about, it receives the main signal on one frequency and then transmits it out on another frequency.
The broadcast repeater.
Right, it's like a broadcast repeater, exactly. Yep.
Okay, very good.
And what
thank you.
frequency is the incoming frequency? Like what range is that in? Is it the broadcast signal, or is it?
Yeah, right. So for one of them, it receives the main channel on 90.5, and for another one, it actually is fed over the internet. So we use both of them.
All right, any more questions for Richard to grill him on the broadcast side of things?
Lots, but let's go.
All right. Anything else on the bench, Richard? Not that that's not enough.
Well, just all the radios that I've got a bunch that need to be programmed, Motorola's that we inherited from the county, and so we're very glad to get them. They're, the real deal. But that's enough to keep me busy.
All right, very good. Kevin, how about you? What's on the bench these days?
Well, really, I owe a big thank you to everybody on the show that has talked about how much easier it's gotten to design and order your own PCB. I was really inspired to take this on and design my own work project for a lab environment for work. I used software that's available online, or you can download it to Easy EDA, and the components from JLC PCB are built into that software. So as you're designing the PCB, you can immediately get a list of components that have availability built in, so if you're going to be waiting a couple weeks for the component or if it's ready off the shelf, and also the pricing of the components too. So I found that really handy. I thought that was kind of an easy way in for a first round of learning to design the boards. That project went really well. Was to simulate liquid flow by simulating pulses into a flow computer. And it just implemented a simple circuit that was repeatable using 2N3904 transistors and some resistors to control the pulse width from the microcontroller and control the secondary voltage source. So about 20 boards arrived from China in less than a week, and fortunately didn't have any issues other than making some mistakes on some screen printing. Yeah, for the win. It was an easy, 2-layer board, nothing too complicated, but
No. Do not minimize the accomplishment of getting that board right on the first time.
yeah.
Right. That is impressive.
The hardest thing is not making a complicated board. The hardest thing is getting the board with one part on it through the entire process. From grab the schematic to figure out the part to do the layout to make the bomb, blah blah blah. It's going through the whole plumbing is really the biggest challenge. So congratulations on getting the first project done.
Thank you. Yeah, but yeah. Oh, a big thank you to all the people that you brought on that have talked about it. And you guys have also talked about it too. I really appreciate it. So it's, we talk about how our hobbies can also translate into work. And I think that's a really good example for me where it's worked out. Yeah.
Oh, brother, let me tell you stories.
I know. I've heard some of your stories, Mark.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah.
Anything else happening on the bench?
Yeah. I do have a second iteration of a rotator, in the works, but it's, with 3 kids, it's kind of hard to find the time. I'm not sure how Mark is able to answer all the questions that, I see come down the pipe and some of the shared, email chains that I've seen.
I only have one kid and she's 18. That's how.
That helps. Yeah.
It helps a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So similar.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Similar type of control. Let's see. I can bring it over here. This version has like a linear. Let me try to take the background blur off so you can see it. I'm trying to describe this.
Those listening on the podcast, we're actually, this is one of the episodes that's going to be on YouTube.
Okay. So it's a linear actuator, that controls some extruded aluminum. And then the rotator has an encoder and is chain driven. Just kind of a general overview there.
Wow.
So, there are a bunch of design decisions as you go through, iterations of something. I guess what I learned from the first one is, the time that I had produced it, it was really hard to find components during COVID for a lot of different electronics and things. So I kind of tried to come up with a design where it looked like those components would be available more often, if something like that was to take place or any other type of issue that we'd run into where we'd have a hard time finding similar type of components. So that's kind of what I try to keep in mind, and 3D printed a lot of the components too, so people could build that too. But another thing that I learned on the first iteration was everybody that wants to build, your design, they don't want to do it exactly how you did it too. They want to change something in the design. So it looked like that was a pretty big hurdle for people too, trying to make it all work, but not quite do it, exactly how you want it to. So I learned that as well through that process. Yeah, but that's all on the bench for me.
Okay, very good. Let's see. Mark, do you want to go next? What's on the bench?
Sure. Sorry, bringing up my notes.
Mark doesn't have anything on the bench.
No, I got nothing.
We can move on then.
Yeah.
That'll be quick. That contract I mentioned in the last episode where I designed the board to go test other things, that customer is incredibly happy and has engaged me to work on the next revision and make a bunch of changes and continue working on things. So I'm super excited about that. I've been spending some time today, especially working on figuring all that stuff out. I got a very kind listener to the show named Matt, gave me an Ender 3 3D printer. He upgraded to a Bamboo, and he's like, for the low price of drive down here and get it out of my garage, you can have my 3D printer. And so I took him up on that because I was trying to get my old Wanhao monoprice printer back up and running, and it works, but it's not fantastic. And so I finally fiddled around with the Ender and got it printing again, and it is so much better than my Wanhao. Matt's like, man, this thing is too fiddly. I want an appliance. And I'm like, great, the Bamboo is a great appliance, but that Ender, man, that is so much better than what I've been dealing with. So step up in my book, step up in Matt's book. Everybody is happy. So again, thank you, Matt. But I've been 3D printing a whole bunch of stuff for myself and for Zoe, my daughter. She's actually working on a costume right now, and she came to me, it's like, Dad, can you print these things? And sent me a couple of Thingiverse links, and I'm like, yeah, I can print those. And so I've been banging those out, which is kind of nice.
How about all your D&D friends? Are they like saying, "Hey, Mark,
My
can I send
D&D
you some
friend.
files"?
So I don't do in-person D&D. All of my gaming, well, first off, it's more Star Wars than D&D at this point, but all of my gaming has been online for the last mumble years. So we don't have minifigs. We're not doing the figurines.
Okay.
But I kind of wish. From a work perspective, KV4P boards are back in stock, and I have UHF versions of the KV4P. So, reminder, KV4P is that little board that you strap to the back of an Android phone that turns your phone into an HT. For the longest time, they were VHF only. We didn't have a good UHF filter designed, and I eventually caved, and rather than trying to design my own, I just accepted the mini circuits version. But that did involve some board layout changes, and so I finally got those board layout changes done, and I am selling both VHF and UHF KV4P boards now. So go on over to electronics.halibut.com/KV4P. And then the exciting part is the project that I'm working on for myself is the station console. For the last 3 or 4 episodes, it seems like every episode I get one more little bit of scope creep. Started out with George saying, "Oh, those that receive audio really should all be mixable with, a volume adjustable." And I'm like, okay, so I added the digital pots to it. Then a listener came up and said, "I would love to know, when you get a short burst of audio, which channel did that just come in?" So he wanted something that when there was audio, a light would light up for that channel, and then it would slowly decay over time. And okay, so that involves reading the peak amplitude of the audio coming in. So I started working on that. And then, most recently, I had someone ask me, it's like, will this thing actually switch CW keys as well? And as I was writing the response saying, no, it won't because blah, 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 I couldn't find a way to physically fit the connectors in the box that was already chosen for this thing. I just ran out of space, physical space for it. And while writing up that email, I figured out a way to fit those in. So I am adding CW key switching to the station console. And one more, this one I am not sure I'm going to do, but I have been chatting with Dr. Scott Wright, Dr. Wright, about SO2R, and he explicitly wants the ability to send cross-channel audio. So every input is stereo. You got a left channel and a right channel. The way it's designed right now, I can adjust the volume of the left input channel to the left output channel, but I do not have the ability to send anything from the left input channel to go to the right output channel. So there's no way to, I can pan a signal from left to right by turning up and down the left and right, but I can't take a stereo image signal and move it over to one side. And Dr. Scott gave me some very compelling reasons why that is handy. But if I do that, that'll double the number of digital pots and double the complexity. And I'm like, oh God, do we really need this?
Well, can I share my own story around that, Mark?
Yes, please.
Very early on, I talked about my little station control box that I built, and it was all passive components and switching. And one of the features I wanted to do was have the ability to listen in my left ear to one audio source and in my right ear to another. In my case, because I was operating as net control on an 80-meter net in the evenings, one of those sources was a remote STR. So the audio source was my computer. So I had a switch on the front that would feed audio normally through, or I'd throw the switch and it would convert it to mono in one ear, and bring up the computer in the other. And independent attenuation, because it was all passive, to lower or, bring to maximum the computer audio. And then I could listen to my local radio and the SDR. There's a low latency internet SDR, about a 0.3 of a second delay. And I found that really helpful when doing net control. So there's another case for it.
So what you describe, you have a mono source. Both of those sources are mono sources, right? So you have a single receiver. That is one source that goes to both your left and right ears.
Correct.
And in that case, my original module of I could just turn down the right audio and leave the left audio up for one of your sources. And then the other source, I could leave up the right audio and turn down the left audio. I may have said the same thing, whichever. You get the idea.
Yeah.
I can just turn up and down one channel of each. And when your source is a mono source, that works just fine with the small number of digital pots. What Dr. Scott wanted is, I've got 2 radios. Each radio has 2 receivers.
Oh.
And I've got receiver,
Yes.
Receiver 1, radio 1, receiver A in the left channel, receiver 1, radio 1, receiver B in the right channel.
Right channel.
And then
Yep.
radio 2, receiver A, and radio 2, receiver B in left and right of their inputs. So you have 4 unique inputs.
Yep.
And he wants to be able to route any of those 4 to either the left or the right output.
Yeah. Okay, Mark, well, just get on that, will you?
Yeah. So I'll just,
Make it so.
Conceptually, it's not that difficult, but it's
just
just
doubles
twice
the
as much
number of
hardware.
pots.
Right?
By the way, there's another feature that you're missing that you need to add in there.
Yes, George?
This is actually a serious suggestion.
Yeah.
So I ran into this when I was doing my original version of the station router thing, which is I was always finding some other thing to route, like, for example, ALC. So if you have multiple radios and an amplifier, you're going to want to route the send command, the send PTT line to the amplifier and an ALC voltage back. So you might need a couple of extra dry contacts, which ultimately I converted that thought into, well, just have a bunch of dry contacts that switch between all the things, because you can put whatever you want on those dry contacts. So I don't know if that's practical or whatever, but that might come up at some point.
Yeah. The CW stuff I was considering implementing as dry contacts. But I'm trying not to use relays because they're physically large. And so it may be GPIO dry contacts.
The problem is anything that's electrical.
It's not literal dry contact. It'll be a digital signal in and digital signal out. But the routing of those digital signals will be wires, not like through a microcontroller kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, you could use something like a CMOS switch, but then you're kind of limited by the voltage range of the switch.
Oh, is ALC an analog signal?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Which is why using relays is kind of maybe the only way to do it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Without intercepting it and re-encoding the value somehow.
Yeah. No, I definitely wouldn't do that. It would be analog switch. I do have plus or minus 5 volts in here, so there's a 10-volt range around ground, or 5 volts around ground. I don't know if that would be enough for ALC. I have no idea how ALC is triggered.
Yeah, I don't know what of all the radios in the world, I have no idea if that would suffice. But anyway, I know this is a Vince increment the counter.
One I'm probably going to be able to successfully say no. I was already considering doing CW as a separate box that would respond to the same control plane commands. Right. So when the control plane said, hey, switch over to radio 2, the CW box would listen to that as well and route the paddles over there. So if we're talking about dry contacts, I may do a literal dry contact as a separate box that listens to the same commands.
And maybe CW as a separate box isn't a bad idea after all.
Yeah. CW, I think, is a common enough use case that because I can because I know how to do it and I know that it's digital, there's no analog to it. I think I would rather do that one in the main box. I wanted to from the beginning. The reason I didn't is because of the physical panel space problem. But then I remembered that I can still put connectors on the bottom of the board as well as the top of the board.
Pro tip from some of the switch boxes I bought off Amazon to send my big alley to one of 3 radios that might be sitting on my bench. Isolate the ground. Isolate all 3 contacts.
That's all opto-isolated.
Yeah, but all 3. The common contact from the paddle, as well.
Yeah. I mean, when you do an opto-isolator, it grabs both sides of the switch. So you would have 2 opto-isolators, one for left paddle and ground, and another one for right paddle and ground. So the ground is inherently isolated when you use an opto-isolator like that.
I don't have any other ideas, Mark.
All right. In the interest of time,
that's it.
Anything else? Hey, Vince, what's on the bench?
Dude, I've just got 2 quick things actually here on the bench this evening. I know it's kind of unusual that I don't have a lot to talk about, which is why I mention it. But I received in the mail thank you from Sean, Ham Radio Dude, or as he's known, Dude Tested on YouTube. He sent me his Little Dude 6 mast. It's a carbon fiber 18-foot mast. It probably was a 25-foot mast when it was originally produced, but the top 3 or 4 sections have been removed. And what this means is it's incredibly nice and firm at the top. It also weighs, oh sugar, I'm going to mess this up, about a pound. It's very lightweight for what it is. It's thicker in diameter than the POTA Explorer 20 that I enjoy so much from Gigaparts. I enjoy so much I have 2 of them. But where it varies, so it's stiffer and thicker around, you open the cap up and the cap is fixed on top of the topmost element of the carbon fiber. And there's a little rope in it so you can grab it to pull it. And there's a little hole through that cap so you can feed a wire through it. There's multiple ways to hook a wire onto the top of this thing. So incredibly well built, very high quality. I've put a link to it in the show notes. I can't wait to get out and use it. I have not had opportunity lately because in Calgary we're having our first ham radio flea market in a year. And I gave notice to the candy store this spring that I would not be able to work in the booth at the flea market because I have so much of my own crap, fleas, to sell. And so all I have been doing...
You freaked me out there for a second when you said, I gave notice to the candy store.
Yes, I know.
Pause.
Yep. So I told the candy store, no, I can't work in the booth. But I did say I'd help them set up and tear down. Now, the secret motivation with that is the candy store gets in an hour before every other seller. So that puts me in the hall an hour earlier than every other seller, which means I can get my choice of tables. Now, I'll also help set up those tables. So, there's benefit that goes along with that work. Anyway, so I've got so much of my own stuff, and it's all small stuff to sell. And I took a look in some of the bins, and you know how you do for a flea market, right? Oh, well, maybe I didn't sell this at the last 2 flea markets. You keep bringing it there, hoping somebody will give you 50 cents, which is all part of the fun. And so I've got a bin full of free things. And most of those free things are books that I've accumulated from my annual ARRL renewal over time. More Wire Antenna Classics, volume 47 or whatever, et cetera, et cetera. So there's been a lot of prep for that. It's been keeping me going. I've also been helping manage the sell-off of goods from an estate from a friend of mine who passed earlier this spring, and the family knows nothing of ham radio. So I've probably spent 15 or 20 hours up at their home organizing, labeling, packing things down, and tagging it so that they can say, oh, if it's got a piece of green tape on it, it goes to the flea market. And so they're bringing it, and they'll provide the labor in the booth. Their table will be right beside mine, so I can help them. These are the things we do for others in the ham radio community. And so the surviving spouse, she said to me, Vince, what do I owe you for all this? I said, nothing. This is what we do. We help each other out. And that's the nature of the community. In getting ready for the flea market, I picked up a ZM2 tuner that was incomplete from a friend of mine. And he says, yeah, I busted off a lead on one of the variable capacitors. So the ZM2 tuner uses 1-inch square polyvaricon style tuning capacitors. These are the same little tuning caps that you find in your handheld AM/FM radio. Well, he busted off one of the tabs, and he did quite a number on it. He tried to resolder it, but the vanes are aluminum, and I thought to myself, well, what am I going to do with this? And I started to try and look for that value of polyvaricon with less than a week to the flea market. Now, I could order up a replacement from the guy who makes the ZM2, but what's the fun in that? And plus, it wouldn't be here in time for the flea market. And with the next flea market being over a year away and my ability to work a flea market once every 3 years, I really didn't want to sit on this asset for very long. And so, with full credit to my buddy Dan, V6TD, lives 926 feet away from me, he said to me, Vince, why don't you take our shared ownership battery spot welder and use it to try and spot weld a little strip of nickel onto it. You can solder onto nickel. And so I'm pleased to report that with some spontaneous expressions of potty mouth and a C-clamp, I was able to, and I had to clean up the plastic around it to get the probes to fit. That's where potty mouth came in. It was super frustrating. I was able to spot weld a strip of nickel onto this thing. Now, there are two pieces of magic here. One, you have to hold the probes right. And as George typed in the show notes for me, if you're holding it wrong, it smells like chicken. With a spot welder, if you're holding it wrong, it feels like hell, because you're going to get a sudden burst of 8,000 volts through your fingertips. So you got to hold them carefully. And then the probes with these things are almost comically large for something this small.
Well, actually, spot welders don't use a very high voltage. They do high current at very low voltages.
All right. Well,
Okay.
well, very good. Thank you, Professor Mark.
Professor
And high
Nerd.
current, of course, disrupts hearts. So I just want to be very careful about this because I am holding it one in each hand, right? I had to carve away. So this little thing is like 1 inch square and it's a 1/2 inch tall. And the plastic on the outside of it is somewhat soft, so I very carefully carved it away with my X-Acto blade to give me some room to work around the corner of it. And then I was able to fit one probe in on one side and then hold the other strip of nickel down with the other probe. And I'll tell you that, and so I activated the foot pedal to make the spot welder go bzzz. And if I hit it only with 2 or 3 spot welds, it would fall off. I'm so proud of myself. I managed to hit it with 9. And I can dangle that thing, and it's in better shape than the other ones that shipped with it. And so it's all working, of course. Where the prior owner had tried to solder onto it, I took my soldering iron and desoldered away from it to clean it up. So I've put a link to that battery spot welder or something like it that we own. Dan and I split it because we hardly use the thing. It's like 85 or 90 Canadian dollars, so it's cheap as borscht. And not a bad tool to have that you need every once in a while for something like building a battery pack or fixing a polyvaricon. So that's not something I ever thought I would do with a battery spot welder. So anyway, that's what's been on my bench on top of, cleaning up a couple of FT857s that have come through the shop and getting those ready for sale as well. There you are.
Well, that sounds like you've been busy. Good thing you haven't welded your fingers together.
It's a good thing I haven't welded my fingers together and I don't smell like chicken fingers. But
Okay, Thomas, how about you? Are you welding anything these days?
I'm not welding anything. I am wielding something here, though, and I can actually show it since we are doing a video episode. But this is a Vibraplex Deluxe semi-automatic bug, right? And I'd bet dollars to donuts. Richard's probably seen a few of these in his days working at a maritime museum. Um, and I owe a great deal of gratitude to Bob W6AWO, who spent, I don't know, probably an hour and a half with me teaching me the ins and outs of setting up one of these bugs. And you'd be really surprised just how many adjustments there are on a mechanical bug and just how finicky they are. But he took me through it, and I'm very grateful. Got it set up because I think I mentioned this probably in the last episode I was on, that during HamX, I spoke with the folks at the Long Island CW Club table way too much, and they had way too many bugs on the table. And I thought, I just got to do this. I've got to get a bug, and I've got to learn to do this. And then Bob, he actually contacted me pretty soon after that about the Don Lawson WB9 CYY bug emulator, which I think I also mentioned last time I was on the show, which is a keyer, an electronic keyer that emulates a bug. And it does it in not a very basic way. It's really, really, really well thought through. It'll let you make all the screw ups you would make with like a mechanical bug. It's really good. It's really good. And it's there to maintain your bug fist when it's not practical to take a bug with you somewhere where you're going. And so anyway, talking to Bob about the emulator, I just thought I need to go ahead and start playing with bugs. And so I got a Vibraplex Deluxe bug. I ordered one from DX Engineering. He helped me set it up, and I declared sometime last month that October would be bug out month for me. And just like when you go on a diet, you want to tell everybody publicly you're doing it so you don't chicken out of it. I did that on QRP, or I kind of said, hey, October is going to be my bug out month. And so all these people kind of chimed in. They're like, it's going to be for me too. And I got all these comments from people saying, yeah, I'm going to do it too. I'm going to do it too. So then I was really stuck in. And I got the bug
it
all
worked. That was your goal.
It did. And I practiced at home. I decided I didn't want to over practice it. I mean, for anybody who's done CW, you know how a straight key works and that kind of fist. And it takes a lot of practice to get good and fairly speedy with a straight key. I mean, that is an art right there. But you know how it works. Really simple. With paddles and electronic keying, one side does dits, the other side does dashes, and with most keyers, you can also do iambic, where you squeeze them and you can get dotted dotted or dotted dotted. I'm used to doing squeeze paddling. That's just how I do it. I think I've done it since the beginning. Well, with a bug, your thumb, usually if you're right-handed, your left finger piece, when you press it, is giving you a string of dits that are mechanically done through like a pendulum action. And different bugs have different ways they do it, but it's very similar. Most Vibraplex bugs stock, which mine is, want to send those at like 500 words a minute. It's like, even when you move the weight on the pendulum out to the very, very, very end, it still is going pretty darn fast. And I didn't want to put any attachments. Some people attach things onto the pendulum to slow it down. Or not paper clips, but like clothespins and weights. Of course, you can get more weights from Vibraplex. You can get pendulum extenders that go out and beyond the damper and the other end of the key to slow it down. But I just thought, no, I don't want to do that. I want to use like a stock, Vibraplex key when I do this. So anyway, I practiced maybe 30, 45 minutes at home on a level surface, with like ideal conditions, and trying to develop the fist that Bob taught me, which was like rocking your hand instead of like moving your thumb and your finger. You kind of keep those stationary and you rock your wrist to like do it. And it helps you, for some reason, it helps you form your dashes and keeps your dashes at about the same pace that your dits are coming out, hypothetically. For me, I am testing that theory, believe me. And so I think it was October 3rd, I went out for my first bug out activation. I did a park activation with this guy, hooked up to the Pentec TR45L, which I just think is a really good looking radio to pair with a mechanical bug. It has a wonderful side tone and pairs really well with it. And I think I used my AX3 antenna. I just wanted to put up something simple, and then hoping I wouldn't have just like a crazy amount of contacts, so I could maybe get out with just like 10 contacts or something. But I hopped on the air, and people in the CW community, and this was like I had butterflies like I did one of the first times I went out on the air, and it was I was excited about that actually because I was doing something different, really different, and and the excitement really translates into a lot of keying mistakes because it's mechanical keys are sensitive to a lot of things. And the one thing that I didn't realize the picnic table I picked out was the least wonky, but these are picnic tables made of like a composite material, not like wood, and they're all sitting on a slope. And so like I thought I was positioning my key like on the diagonal, thinking, okay, this will mitigate the slope a bit. No, actually what it did was it just made the pendulum not work, had to work a little harder to hit the dits when I would send it because it was kind of working against gravity. I should have just had it like in the flow with the slope, I think, but it didn't matter. Um, it was not the best fist in the world, but I made it through the activation. I was super happy. All the other people I contacted were just awesome, and I heard way more mechanical bugs coming back to me when I was doing this activation, which just really, really pleased me. And lots of people wrote to me afterwards, just like, "You did it great. You had a good fist," and they were just being kind. I know that. It's like you don't look fat in that. Sort of thing. Like I knew that it wasn't, the best, but they were just so kind. And I did decide though at that activation, I had a lot of traveling around to do this month. We had a lot of family things going on and just traveling here and there. And so I decided in advance that really I'm going to be using the bug emulator in the field way more than I'll actually use the mechanical key because this thing, first of all, it weighs a ton, but it just doesn't travel well. Like it's so easy to mess it up, when you're traveling in a car and you got a family trip or something like that, they're just a little harder to protect and take out, and you really do want to find a level surface to put it on when you're keying. Well, the electronic key or the bug emulator, you don't have to do that, and you use iambic paddles with it. And the way he has it set up, actually, for straight key night, the right finger piece, when you press it, is a straight key action. Like there's nothing digital going on in the keyer with that. It is a straight key action. It's all the digital stuff's happening with the left finger piece when you press it to get the dits. And you can control the speed on it, which is actually not too bad when you're learning to do this, just to kind of get your fist in place. But I've now done probably about 5 activations, maybe a little bit more than that, using the bug emulator, and it's a lot of fun. And I find that when I came back home and I started using my Vibraplex again, just in the shack with just for a side tone, I was really impressed that I felt like I had gained, like a little bit of a fist, just using that bug emulator during this time. So it's been really interesting, really interesting with me, and the pileups have been huge lately, like really big, and to the point that like I wanted to end an activation a couple of parks or 3 parks ago when I was activating out near Raleigh. I really needed to go pick up my daughter at State. We were meeting up with her to have dinner and stuff. And I started just on my K2. It has a really nice variable power output. And I thought, well, I'm just going to start lowering the power. And I started lowering it and lowering it and lowering it. And once I got it down to like 400 milliwatts, and I was using my AX3 antenna, so just like this little 4-foot whip antenna on a picnic table. That's when my buddy George M1GEO called me. I ended up working him in the UK with 400 milliwatts on this little 4-foot whip antenna with my bug emulator, which is probably a first for him.
That's crazy.
Isn't
400
it crazy?
milliwatts across the pond. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it came out to something like it was 9,000 plus miles per watt.
Should plug that into the K4 FMH miles per watt calculator.
Yeah, I probably should.
There we go.
Should.
All right.
So yeah, that's what I've been up to. That's been, oh, there is one other thing on my bench actually, that I did. Believe it or not, I am a little more nerdy than oh, you know,
Yeah,
Oh,
we
sorry.
this will
believe
come
it.
as a surprise to everyone, but I'm in a Star Trek club, and it's just like our little local library. It's a really small group that gets together, and this is something that I made, right? Okay, now I'm holding it up. This is, they're like roly beads or something like that kids use, and you make designs with them, and then you know, in different colors, you'll make like a pattern or a design or something, and then you use an iron to like melt them all together, right?
Yeah.
And the person that was organizing it, they said, "Oh, I've made a really good one. We're going to work on it tonight while we're watching a whole bunch of things." We had a Spock theme going on, and so they made this Spock design. And I looked at it and I was like, "Oh, that's really cool." And I've never done one of those, but I've set them up for my daughters like a bazillion times. This thing has like 900 something beads in it, and you're putting them in a grid with tweezers. And that's everything I could do in 2 hours to get this done.
And Thomas is holding up an object that's about 6 inches square and you know, maybe 1/8 of an inch flat, because these beads are 1/8 of an inch tall, and you'd normally run a piece of twine through them, you know, to create a necklace, but they're plastic, right? So you set them beside each other and then run an iron on them, they'll all kind of weld together.
Yeah, and this image is like one of like a Spock, I think, from
It's
a
part
probably
of his
something
face.
animated, and it's part of his face, but it's just kind of a cool design. So
Yeah.
I'm really proud of this, and it was literally setting on my workbench area over here. So that was what was on my workbench.
Literally,
You
on your
realize that
workbench.
admitting that you're in a Star Trek club in our community is not an unusual thing. Well, maybe the admission is, but the fact is not unusual. I mean, really.
I know. I have so many friends, even when I've mentioned it in videos and posts and things, because our family has a Star Trek night, and I'm like, they're like, "Oh yeah. What's your favorite episode? What are your favorite series?" You know, and I get all these questions about it. So, oh yeah, there's a lot of Star Trek love out there.
Absolutely. Is that it for the bench?
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, I can ask myself.
Hey, George, what's on your workbench?
Mark, I'm glad you asked. That was a cue. A couple things. So I'm getting more involved with one of our local radio clubs, the Portland Amateur Radio Club, and they invited me to help them work on the repeater system, which is fun. So we spent some time up at one of the repeater sites, buzzing out the cavities and testing the transmitters and making sure everything is working fine. And we're looking at how we could link the repeaters together, because there's multiple repeaters and they're standalone. And one of the things I was suggesting is that perhaps they should be linked together. That way you build more community than bifurcate it. So that's kind of a direction. And one of the things we're looking at is using Allstar as the way to do the backhaul between the different repeaters. And you can run the backhaul over the internet, or you could do a point-to-point Wi-Fi link or whatever. So we're not sure exactly how we're going to actually do that physically, but the first step is to dive into Allstar and see if I could make it work the way I want it to work. Because Allstar is really good at a client side. You know, I'm a handy-talkie talking to my home base station to get into the network, but using Allstar as a backhaul between repeater sites is a little bit different. And so I had to get a node up and running and familiarize myself with Allstar 3 and how the configuration files work and all this before I could actually make it do what I wanted to do, which it doesn't do out of the box. So that's been a bit of an education. If there's anybody out there who has done that, I would love to talk to you. And let me be specific about what that is. Not building an Allstar node, that's easy. So did that, works fine. What I'm talking about is if you have multiple repeaters, and I don't mean to have each repeater connect into each other just for voice communications, but be able to pass DTMF control and that sort of thing. And I know it's doable, but and somebody probably has some configuration files that'll do this. And rather than reinvent the wheel, I'd like to find somebody who's done it, who could give me some advice or share their configuration. So if you're an Allstar whiz on using Allstar as a backbone to interconnect repeaters, drop me a line so we can chit chat about that. And in the repeater vein, I'm also working on a new generation of the repeater controller. Actually, there's two projects. There's a fancy one, and then there's a bare bones one. And the fancy one is actually being worked on by my buddy John KJ6K, who's the brains of the outfit. So John is prototyping the DSP version of the repeater controller, which will be a big scalable, 16 plus port controller. It'll be really fancy. But that's going to take a while to get that to work. And so while that's in the oven, I'm working on the other end of the repeater controller spectrum, the quick and dirty. I need like a 3 or 4 port, very minimal features that I could slap together temporarily while we're building this big fancy one. So that's kind of work in process with the idea of being able to connect it easily to an Allstar backbone in case we need to do that.
So I'll point out, I put in the show notes, George, my friend Freddie Mac, Ham Radio Crusader on YouTube, has a series of very good Allstar configuration videos, and you may find a nugget in there.
Yeah, I watched 2 or 3 of his videos, and they're probably the best ones I've seen. So yeah. He does a really, really good job. And from what I've seen so far, it's very much in the vein of, I'm an end user, I want to set up my node, and then I want to customize my node. And he covers all that stuff really well. But I haven't seen anything about using it as a backhaul. And by the way, people might be wondering, like, well, what's the big deal? So to give you an idea, the way we want to implement this is each repeater will have a multi-port controller. And one of the ports will go to a Raspberry Pi that connects either over the real internet or over a point-to-point, 5 gig link. So what's the difference? The difference is, for example, that Allstar Link mutes DTMF by default. And if I want to control a repeater down the path, I can't have it mute the DTMF. I have to let it pass DTMF. Okay, so that's like one thing. Another thing is the way our repeater controllers work is the star is used to control the local repeater, and the star is also used to control the Allstar node. And if you, for example, if you have a command that's like star 3123,
right?
Well, in Allstar lingo, that means make a transceive connection to node 123. Well, I can't have this 2 active things, and I hope they don't have the same commands, right? I mean, the odds are they won't, but so I have to have a way to keep the Allstar node from decoding stuff without to keep it from decoding stuff with a star. Yeah. And change the prefix on it. By the way, everything I'm describing, I did on IRLP like 10, 15 years ago. Right. And so why can't you do it with Allstar? I'm sure there's a way to do it, but I just have no idea how to do it. So I'm not that familiar with how the system works. Okay. So that's that. So thanks for the pointer. And he might be a good guy to reach out to just to see if he knows how to do it. Even if he hasn't done a video on it, that would be useful to know. Yeah, he hasn't done a video. I'm chatting with him on Discord right now. Oh, okay. So. Well, yeah, if he has any tips, that'd be super. So the other thing that I did when I was at CPAC, when Mark and I, were you there at CPAC? Yeah. You were there at CPAC. Yeah, you were next to me. It's a blur, man. When we were there, in the first day, I'm like, Mark, I'll be back. And I went over to the flea market and bought a bunch of junk. So one of the things that I picked up was an ICOM 706 Mark II-G. And now the 706 Mark II-G was a hot radio 20 years ago, and they stopped making it about, 6-7 years ago. So it's a 20-year-old technology, maybe older. And there is one for sale for $400, which is a pretty good deal. So, and it looked really nice shape. So I picked it up, and I found online a 500 hertz CW filter. So I got the filter, popped it in there, and the radio's working great. And so the thing that surprises me is the radio is fairly small. If you compare it to everything else in the market, 100 watt mobile configuration, it's the closest thing is the FT891. Mm-hmm. But the 706 has 2 meters and it has UHF. And it's actually a little bit smaller than the 891. And I'm just like really surprised that there is not a modern day current available radio that's the same form factor as the 706 with the same bands and the same power and everything on the market.
And
It
how,
just isn't.
in terms of size, how does it compare to the FTX one with the 100-watt amplifier?
Oh,
on
quite
it?
a bit smaller in half the weight. So the FTX one is like 9 pounds, and it's about 10 inches deep. It's about 8 inches wide, and about the head is 3.5 inches tall. Now the body is maybe 3/4 of an inch shorter, but if you multiply all the dimensions out, it's probably half or a third the volume of the FTX1 Optima, and it's half the weight.
I mean, and you think about it too, and they even have a detachable head, on that radio. It's a really capable radio, and there are a lot of them out there. How hard was it to find that 500 hertz filter?
Oh, surprisingly easy. I just went on eBay and I found several sellers that had them.
Wow.
I mean, they're not cheap. So when you compare it to a modern radio, that 500 hertz filter is just a built-in DSP feature in the radio. So you don't buy filters for modern radios. And this is back in the era where if you want a filter, you got to buy the filter and install it.
A mechanical, physical filter.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
which is fine. Go ahead.
I had this 703, and I got it and immediately bought the filter, which, unlike the like 817, 818 from Yaesu, you do have to, at least on the 703, you had to solder it in, which was not a big deal. But then if you're taking it out later, you just have to remember it's not something you're going to go to Hamfest and just unplug or whatever.
Well, that's interesting because the 703, for people that don't know, is the QRP version of the 706, kind of, with an antenna tuner built into it. But in the 706, the filter is a plug-in. It's
Really?
not soldered in. Yeah.
It may not be the same. It may not be the same filter model that
It's
you
probably
should
not.
have,
Yeah.
but it's. I mean, those are great radios, and I don't think they're especially difficult to repair. They're like the same kind of thing. Having been discontinued this long, there are always these parts that are kind of hard to get. Maybe some screen stuff and everything. But if you just keep visiting flea markets and stuff, you can get like an extra head. You can get some extra things that you find laying around and keep it going for a really long time. But you think about it, I mean, it's a great mobile radio too, and still is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's really compact for the features and the size. There's nothing like it on the market.
No.
I think if you compare its receiver to let's say an FTX or a 705 or something like that, those are 20 years newer. They're going to be better radios. Some of the features like the noise reduction on the FTX is really good. So it's got a spectral display and all that. So clearly it's kind of a different generation of radio, but there's nothing in the power output and the size in the frequency coverage that's on the market. So it's kind of a sweet spot in the market. So it's surprising that nobody makes one. So anyway, you'd think they would. So I guess that's about it for me. So what we're going to do is take a break. And when we come back, we're going to dive into shore stations and all about Richard's experience on the radio. So we'll be right back. So Richard, why don't we start out with a bit of background on the Maritime Historical Society and what your role is there?
Sure thing. Well, it's the Maritime Radio Historical Society, the MRHS, and that is something that we founded in the very last months of 1998. And the stimulation was when our local coast station here, local to where I am sitting, call sign KPH, finally went off the air. And it was a traumatic experience, certainly for the folks who worked there. I didn't work there. I didn't lose my career. I didn't lose my job. They did. It was the end of the line. But it was so emotionally impactful, even for me, that it took me 2 years to go back there because I'd been to so many of these abandoned stations. And what you see is, of course, vandalizing and spray painting, and just couldn't face that. But my colleague Tom Horsfall and I finally did go back and talked our way into the building. It was still had a guard on the door, and we said, look, we're radio men. You might as well just let us in, make it easy for everyone here. And for some reason, he, I guess, thought that we were okay, which we were, and we walked down the hallway. And I still get goosebumps. Before we got into the operating room, I was hearing static and Morse code, and I was hearing ships calling. And I know the joint is closed for 2 years, so how can this be? And we walk into the operating room, and it was like they had left 20 minutes ago. The keys were still on the desks. The coffee cups were still there. Admitted there are 5 or 6 dead flies in the coffee cups now, but they were there. And the moving thing was that the thing that they had done last before leaving and turning out the lights and locking the door was to put the receivers on scan, so they were keeping a symbolic watch over the airwaves.
Oh, wow.
And then we realized, okay, the ears here in Point Reyes were alive and working, and the voice, the transmitter site in Bolinas, which is a 1914 Marconi transmitter site, was still there, dark, cold, but there. And we said, well, you don't get your life's work handed to you in this way very often, so you better do something about this. And, well, all we had to do was convince the National Park Service, and to this day I don't know where they got the trust in us and the vision to think that, yes, this was something that was worth preserving, and we were the guys to do it. And I guess I should clarify that both the transmit and receive sites are on National Park Service land as part of the Point Reyes National Seashore. So without that, we would have gone nowhere, but they did, and I really remember when they gave us the keys, and Tom and I were walking out rapidly through the parking lot, and they gave us the keys. Says, yeah, I know, keep walking. Because we said it was like giving the keys to the asylum to the inmates. So we
gotta get out of here before they come to their senses.
Yeah, precisely right. Yeah, you truly understand that. But we've had a wonderful relationship with the Park Service every year since then. And we just kept going since then. And step by step, we've gone so much farther than we thought was the wildest idea we could think of at the time.
So let me rewind a sec. So when you're talking to the Park Service, what were you proposing that you guys would do with the site?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because once we decided we were going to make this proposal, we spent hours and days crafting this proposal in a beautiful binder with pictures with circles and arrows on the front and a paragraph on the back of each one saying what it was and that it was going to be and how great this was going to be. And I remember Tom and I are sitting on one side of a long table, and the senior Park Service administrative folks are on the other side, and we shove the proposal across, and they're not looking at the proposal, they're looking at us in the eye. And I realized then that they're saying, okay, well, how crazy are these guys? Are they crazy enough that it's going to be a 5150 situation down the line? We're going to have to drag them out, or are they going to stick with it? And why they made that decision, they didn't know us. Why they made the decision that it was okay, I still don't understand, but they did. But we basically said this should be physically preserved and it should be returned to operation at some level so that we could honor our heroes and heroines who did this for a profession for so many years by replicating what they did and keeping their skills and their traditions alive. And to be honest, what we thought the best thing we could do when we said, okay, let's go wild here. What do you think that, we could really do here? And we said, okay, we could get one or two of these Henry transmitters, the modern transmitters, we consider them modern, Henry 5,000 watt marine transmitters. We could get a couple of these on the air, and if we're really lucky, we can switch them over to ham frequencies, and if we're really, really lucky, we can get a call sign K6 KPH, and that's what we thought we could do. Well, it's just gone so far past that it's just amazing. But that was our plan anyway, to preserve it and have it on the air and operating.
So for those people who aren't familiar with shore stations, could you take a minute and describe what the purpose of the stations were to begin with?
You bet. Well, before the advent of radio, of course, when a ship left port and went over the horizon, that was the last you heard of it until it got back, and you had no idea what was going on with your investment and your loved ones or anything else. With the advent of wireless, and then you had this ship-to-shore communication, not really liked by the captains because now they're getting orders from shore where they were completely independent in the past. But this soon evolved into an important aspect of the maritime merchant marine service. So this was the way you communicated with your ships, ship to shore. Didn't have to be through KPH, but it would have to be like a station just like it, all in Morse code, of course. And the idea was that you would file a telegram for your ship with whatever company you were going to use. The ship would get that over the air, answer back and originate a message to you. And of course, it was a money-making enterprise because we charged by the word. And so most of the telegrams were very brief, but the ones that we liked the most when it was in commercial service was the ones that maybe a ocean liner coming into port with its shopping list, and that just went on forever, and you'd say, yeah, keep sending, like more money for the company. So it was a way to communicate with ships, and it was the only way to communicate for ships for just about 100 years.
Now, there's two stations that I hear about. Besides KPH, there's also KFS. What was the relationship between those two stations?
The call sign KFS is the one that was used by the competing station. In the U.S., unlike most other countries, it was independent corporations that were running this service as opposed to the government. So it was competition between stations, and Globe Wireless operated the other station down the peninsula with their receive site at Half Moon Bay, a town on the coast, very beautiful spot on the coast there. And so it was always a competition between them, who was going to buy out who. And it turned out in the end that Globe Wireless bought the license for KPH and incorporated those frequencies and call sign into its operation. So we were left without a commercial license. And I negotiated for years with the owners of Globe Wireless to say, look, we can have an arrangement here where we can use the original call sign because it's an iconic call sign that goes back to 1905, really. And they would, no, well, I don't know, and you really couldn't get anywhere. But finally I got a call and said, yeah, well, how would you like to do exactly what you've been asking to do? And we thought that was great. So they were in competition, they were combined, and then we were able to return the call sign back to its original transmitting site along with the KFS call sign because they now owned all these frequencies and they wanted to see some activation on them. So they weren't just sitting there with nothing going on. So it was a complex back and forth relationship, but we were very honored to be able to return mainly the KPH call sign to the Bolinas transmitter site, and even more honored than that, to have Ray Smith, who was the senior Morse operator who signed the station off the air from the site, to come back, sit where he had sat for 20 years as an operator, senior Morse operator at KPH, and bring it back. Exactly.
That is so cool.
Wonderful.
Wow.
So after you started getting involved and you said you got the permission to use the call signs, at that point, it was the operation on commercial frequencies or using the amateur radio call sign?
We used both, and the reason that we were able to do that is that we got our own co-station license. This is in the period where we had no authority to use the KPH call sign or any other call sign, so we just didn't have that. And we thought, well, we would have to apply for our own co-station license, and we went back and forth among ourselves literally for a year saying, well, you can't do that. Well, why not? Well, I don't know, but you can't do it. But why? Well, heads will explode in Washington if you do it. And because nobody had applied for a new co-station license in probably 40 years. But we were very lucky to have the advice of a woman at the FCC, the master of the Form 601. And she said, well, you check this box and this box, but don't check this box, and you send it in. And I selected frequencies that were not assigned elsewhere, so it made it as easy as possible, just a few frequencies. And the great thing about the FCC is they are somewhat robot-like. They get this application, they look through the tome and the rules. Yes, okay, this is good. Boom, here's your stamp. And the call sign for that station was and is KSM, and we still hold that license.
Oh,
so
that's cool.
That was the bridge. So they could take back KPH and KFS, the owner. We're not the owner of that license, and they could deny us the privilege of using those frequencies any time. But here we have this fallback license that we can continue commercial operations with, if that should happen.
Okay, so you've got multiple licenses that you can operate under. What do you actually do with that in the commercial bands?
We try to do it exactly as it was done. So the station goes on the air. Now, the big difference, it used to be, of course, 24 hours a day. It is now on the air every weekend on Saturdays. And we do exactly as the station did in the past. We broadcast. We have a certain amount of broadcasts, that is to say weather, high seas weather for the Pacific. And this is the real deal. It's from the National Weather Service, or NOAA, and it's current weather. We broadcast press, which the station did. You had supposedly to subscribe to it, and on the ocean liners, they would type out the press and issue a newsletter. We still broadcast press, but mainly we listen for calls from ships at sea. Now, of course, in the glory days, every ship had Morse code, and every ship had a radio officer on board. These days, of course, there are very few, but there still are some, mostly the historic ships. And we listen for those calls, and we do the procedure just exactly like they did. It's quick. It's not like amateur radio. You don't get to chat around because time is money.
We're not rapturing here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And no, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
And in the glory days, there was so much traffic that between the times the traffic list was broadcast, and the traffic list is just a list of the call letters of the ships you're holding messages for. And it's published when each station around the world broadcasts that list. So for KPH, it was the odd hour, every 2 hours on the odd hour. So you'd send out that list and maybe go out for a smoke while that was going out and come back in, and then it was the deluge. KPH, I have a message. Get me. I want to send. I want to receive. And you'd work through each one of those guys, and you'd set up a list, just like in the bakery. You'd take a number, and you'd say, okay, you're number 7, you're number 8, and you'd go through one after the other. And the guys would tell me that it was not uncommon that here's the 2 hours, the traffic list is supposed to go out again, but they haven't gotten all the guys that were hanging out there for the first time around. And they'd set them up. Yeah, we know you're still out there. Okay, now you're number 1, 2, 3. Okay. And it was like that throughout the day. Very intense, very demanding, and the best operators that there were. But the guys would tell me that, Richard, if I could come back to work tomorrow, I would do it. It was the best job I ever had. I just loved it. It really meant a lot to them.
So do any of the guys who were operators come by the station and operate for fun at this point, or are there not that many of them around anymore?
That's right. That's exactly right. Very sadly, the last station manager, Jack Martini, and the senior Morse operator, Ray Smith, who I've mentioned, Dick Flint, the guy who lived locally, they would all come out and they would operate, and you just see these smiles on their faces. Because in fact, I remember Jack Martini the first time we put the station on the air, and I was, after 2 or 3 years, well, it ended in 97, year 2000, we had it back on the air in some small way. And I was just watching his face, and you could just see the emotion because he never thought he'd see that again. But those guys, sadly, are no longer with us. And of course, when they were, we were merciless with them. We would sit them down and just grill them like onions. We want to know everything. You came in, just where did you hang your hat, and tell me everything since then. And
they had to have gotten a kick out of that.
Well, they had, these stories, the grandkids, their eyes are just glazing over. But
exactly. Yeah.
Here's a bunch of guys that not only are interested but hungry to know every possible detail.
Yeah. And how often do you get an opportunity to get all those mundane details, to make things kind of complete? I mean, that's absolutely brilliant.
That's right. You've got it. They're little pieces, the way they, their techniques, what each one did, what shorthand they used, how they logged the calls, because we still use the mill, the telegraph typewriter. It's a typewriter, but only in uppercase. It's made for recording telegrams and keeping the log. So we do that, and we do it exactly as they did, and because we found out from them how they do it.
That's brilliant.
And,
so when they were operating, was it all CW, or did they do radio teletype as well?
Yeah, good question. For the vast majority of the time, the station and all other stations of its type were on the air. It was straight Morse. And they experimented with teletype, regular Bordeaux teletype. But of course, as you know, you lose just a couple of characters in that due to fading or static or interference, and you get garble for quite a amount of time before the printer can reestablish itself. But with the advent of error-correcting teletype, called SITOR in the commercial service and AMTOR in the amateur service, the ARQ format where I send you a packet. Did you get it? Yes or no? And the stations would lock up. Then you got error-free transmission, and we did use that quite a bit, quite extensively, and it was a real moneymaker because you didn't have to have a skilled operator on each end of the circuit. You just needed a couple of people to monitor what was going on. And the ship could press a button and ring a bell and get, a real person on the line. But basically they could just send and receive their messages automatically. So yeah, once that came about, that was a big moneymaker.
Talk a little bit about the operating positions. You said they would have the typewriter to actually take messages. Did they operate with we talked about bugs earlier. Did they use straight keys or bugs, or what kind of keys did they use?
Yeah, I followed your narration, and by the way, Thomas, I do follow your stuff online quite a bit, and I really enjoyed you holding up the Vibraplex original there, and the keying evolved for the vast amount of time. It was Vibroplexes, just like you showed, and a matter of fact, a 1920s photograph that we have shows them using Vibroplexes that just look like the ones you could buy today. And some guys use side swipers, which I don't know if you know about that. It's just a back and forth key, but no vibrating parts. That's a talent. I have one of those, and I was barely able to graduate to the point of not embarrassing myself too much with a side swiper. When the advent of electronic keys came along, the Hallicraft's TO keyer was the one that was the really one that you could use professionally. Guys did use that, but we don't. We use strictly mechanical keys. And you were talking about all of the adjustments, and that is certainly true. And so at the station, there's a cubby holes where each person would put their key, because you adjust that exactly as you want it, and you do not touch another man's key. Or if you do, it's a fist fight out in the parking lot, because you get it just exactly as you want it. And we like to use the mechanical keys, and I did hear what you were saying about the bug emulator. Because I guess with the bug emulator, but certainly with the bug itself, you can put in your style and your technique and do it as you want to do it.
I'm sorry,
personally.
I just want to say for just 1 second that I'm still just appreciating the fact that you used the words fist fight. And it had a double meaning that you don't usually get to appreciate.
I did not pick that up the first time through.
Neither did I. I'm embarrassed.
I love it.
Me either, and I've been saying that for years. So yeah, thank you. But there's the one key, and one guy uses a blue racer, for example, 100-year-old blue racer. He likes that. For me, it's a key that was donated to us by an operator at the station. It's an original, but it's got a double thick base. He modified it with a double thick base, so it would stay put on the table at sea, and it came in the box he used with the call letters of the ships he had been on. But that key is, and I've got a number of keys, and including ones of that same vintage as his. But man, it has just that edge in the feel. It's just like nothing else, and that's the one I use on the air.
Is it a semi-automatic?
It's an original, but it's modified by him with this double base, and it's got the jewel movements in it, which is again, it's very subtle, but at a certain level, you can feel that.
With the double bass, do you find that it's that the keying position's a little different in terms of it's a little higher?
It is higher, but it's fine with me. And I'm a lefty, and I use a right-hand key, so I got a lot going on. But it's just perfect. So that's why we kind of stick with that. So in the operating positions, there's 6 of them at the station. There's a main position which controls the medium frequency transmitter as well as the HF transmitters, and controls what broadcasts are going to go out or whether the wheel is going to go out. The wheel is the repeating message on all our frequencies saying, this is us, give us a call, we want your business. And the other positions control all the HF transmitters, but not the broadcasts or the medium freq transmitter. And we've integrated the amateur transmitters into that control panel on all 6 positions. And those amateur transmitters are the same ones that as the commercial transmitters. They're just moved in frequency and reduced in power. But other than that, they're the same antenna, the same transmitter, the same control circuitry, same receivers, just on a different frequency.
On the CW keying topic, how fast were the operators typically running their traffic?
Yeah, the rule is that you match the speed of the sending operator on the ship. But a good commercial speed is somewhere about 20, 25, maybe 30 words a minute. There are some speed demons that go higher than that, but no sense going higher if one guy on the end of the circuit you can't do that. Mm-hmm. The one thing that you really have to be cautious about is if you're working a Russian ship, that you never want to tell the operator to speed it up a little bit, because the Russians are known as speedy. They will just smoke you. And so then you're in a position of well, you're supposed to copy it. You asked them to speed up. Well, okay, comrade, here it is. Or the ultimate embarrassment of saying, well, I didn't mean that fast.
QRS.
Yeah, you don't want to have to say that. But the point is that the operators at the coast stations were really the best of the best, because on board the ships, you could get away with anything. You could send fast, you could send slow, you could send like you're drunk, you could send like you're batting 2 spoons together, you could do whatever you wanted to do, you could do. And the operator at the coast station had to be able to say, yeah, I got it, fine, no, I got it, keep it coming, keep it. Money for the company, keep coming, no worries, I got it. And so they were really good. They were the best there were.
So one thing I want to go back to, you mentioned some of the different locations, being Point Reyes, and also Half Moon Bay, etc. Could you talk a little bit about the nature of the stations that are in split locations? Where do you transmit? Where do you receive? What are those locations like? Where are they? For those people who don't know the Bay Area that well, where are they located?
Yes, I can describe that, and should start off by saying that the reason for having the two different locations, and among this group that'll probably be obvious, is that you've got a dozen and more high-powered transmitters banging away at the transmitter site, so you really want to have the receive site physically remote from that, so you are not overloaded and not able to hear anything. In fact, at the transmit station with all that going on, even though we have receivers there, you can't hear anything because of all this other stuff going on. So that's why they're separate. The current receive site was built in 1930, and it's on the Point Reyes Peninsula in the heart of the Point Reyes National Seashore. And that was built as a receive site not for KPH, but for the point-to-point operation. The
Point Reyes is up north of the Golden Gate Bridge, is that right?
That is right. That
okay.
is exactly right. And it's in Marin County and right on the coast. And as you say, just north of the Golden Gate Bridge, and right, beautiful view of the ocean. And that was built as a receive site. It was established by Dr. Harold Beveridge, the inventor of the Beveridge antenna, who I actually got to meet and talk with in his study on Long Island. Looked him up, and he invited me over.
Wow.
You can imagine what for a radio nut, what that was like.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the point-to-point receive site. So these were the fixed links across the Pacific to the cities of the Pacific Rim. And KPH moved in there after the Second World War, and that's where it is today. And the transmit site is in Bolinas, which is also just north of the Golden Gate Bridge, and in fact, very close to the actual Golden Gate itself. And that was established in 1914 by the Marconi Company when they began trans-Pacific, in fact, global wireless communication. The West Coast station in the U.S. was established there with the standard Marconi rotary spark gap transmitter at 230 kilowatts. We have pictures of it, and it's Frankenstein stuff, but they made it work. So those are the two sites. They're separated by between 15 and 20 miles airline distance.
So when they were operating, would they ever operate duplex or?
It's always duplex.
Okay, so they're transmitting on one frequency, listening on another.
Yes, that's a very good point. The coast station remains fixed on its assigned channels, so you know where to tune for them. Mm. And before the advent of digital tuning, for example, that's why we would run the wheel, so that you could, no matter what ocean you happen to be in, you could tune around. Okay, here's KPH is coming in strongly on 12. I can't hear him at all on 22, so okay, I'm going to answer him on 12, and then the ship would call you on a calling frequency and say, okay, I got you, go up. That's the term, up. And they'd go to a working frequency, and you'd work them up there, but it was always duplex. The only exception was on 500 KC. That was a simplex frequency.
Would they ever transmit simultaneously on different bands because the propagation?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, all the time. Well, the wheel would go out on all bands all the time.
Oh, okay. So the wheel being that's the list of stations you're holding traffic for?
The wheel is the repeating announcement saying, this is us, here we are, here's our spot on the dial. Please give us a call. We're listening on these frequency bands, so give us a buzz.
So are there any stations on the air in the United States anymore that besides your station? I mean, any other commercial coastal stations, or is that kind of all old hat now?
It's all gone, and not only in the United States, but around the world. When we started our project, there were still several who were on the air, and one by one, the lights went out, and until we were the last one standing. The one that we would hear most recently were in South Korea. Very interesting coast stations. They were there all the time, and they ran a traffic list. Never worked anybody in the 20 years I listened to them. And we looked at we looked up the ships on the traffic list. Half of them are sunk. And I said, well, I think somebody forgot these guys in a basement somewhere. They just nobody told them they were fired. They keep on sending them a check. They keep doing the job, but eventually even they disappeared. But each one had its own characteristic, and on our website, we were lucky enough to have recorded a bunch of them. And you don't even have to know the call sign. Okay, this is the Japanese coast station. This is the Mexican one. This is the Cuban one. It was really wonderful to listen to them.
When I was SWLing a bunch, I tried to get QSL cards from non-amateur, non-broadcast stations. So what we called utility monitoring. And coast stations were actually pretty good at that. And I got QSL cards and letters and patches and all kinds of stuff from WLO down in Louisiana. They were a big station, and I can't remember the other ones. But they would, if you sent them a letter or a QSL card, they would respond. I mean, it was really pretty cool that they would take the time to bother to do that.
Yeah, they're radio nuts, just like us. They just are lucky enough to be working in a profession that they love. And we do that, of course. We acknowledge those reception reports with a certificate or a QSL card or whatever it is. But yeah, there were so many of them. And WLO, Renee was the owner there for a long time and a good friend, and he just loved it. He just loved it. He kept the station on the air past the time that it really made financial sense, because it was his soul. He just loved it so much.
I could totally appreciate that something like that has a life, and to shut it off is just it's wrong. I mean, I can totally relate when you're describing the operators and what it was like for them to actually send the last message and shut down, and why they would even just leave the radios on. I mean, it's funny how we are so attached to our radios. They're like it's really a living thing. It's not just some, it's not a truck, right? Well, although I'm sure people love their truck,
yes.
But it's surprisingly a live thing.
Well, George, you really, I see you really understand that, and it brings to mind the time when it really did end, 2 years after KPH went off the air at its original locations. Globe Wireless, which, as I mentioned, had bought the license, had a ceremony, an event down at their station where they were using the KPH call sign and the KFS call sign. And they had an event. It was going to be the last day of Morse. It was July 12th, 1999. And I was there along with several of my colleagues. And what I remember most is that what I guess first thing I remember is I just wheedled and whined until these guys would let me send one of the last messages. So that's a great honor, and it's listed on the back of my license. But really what I remember most, going to your point, is that you'd look around the room and see these grizzled old SOBs, the guys who were, if you walk, I don't know how many you walk into bars, but if you walk into a bar, there's an old guy down at the end of the bar, this grizzled old guy, and not to mess with this guy, because he's minding his own business, but he's just down there. And these are the radio officers that had sailed every sea and seen everything and been in convoys during the war. And I'm looking around, and here's these guys, and they're weeping, honestly. And I have to admit, I felt that as well. Yeah. And so, because they're seeing their life and their love and their profession pass away literally before their eyes and ears. The other thing is then when it finally came my turn to send some of the final messages, I realized, behind me are the best Morse operators in the world.
No pressure.
No, no, but no pressure, but don't mess up, man. You know? No.
That's hilarious.
But that after that is when we went up to the KPH receive site and walked in past the guard, and that's when we said, okay, we're not going to let this go away.
That's so great. It really reminds me of you see a lot of things like aircraft restoration. You know, like I went to the air show here in Oregon a couple weeks ago, and there's a P-51 that's flying at the air show. You know, and the P-51's this beautiful airplane, and the thing is running, and that's a labor of love, you know, and a piece of history. See, and like you can't let something like that go.
See, again, you put your finger on it because we think of it, well, I think of it anyway, as, okay, you've got this tall ship down at the Hyde Street Pier in San Francisco, and it's beautiful and it's been restored and you can go on it. But it's a little bit different if the tall ship is plying the oceans, if it's actually out there doing it and doing its work. And that's what we've managed to do. And as far as we know, that's unique.
I want to talk a little bit about the gear that's used at the station. In the last generation of equipment, because over the years I'm sure things changed a lot, but at the point when it initially went off the air before you guys took it over, what kind of radio equipment was in operation?
At that point, in 1990-91, they had installed transmitters to take the place of the 1950s vintage RCA transmitters. And these were the Henry transmitters, the HF5000D transmitters, and they were the least expensive on the market, and you could tell. They were. I mean, I know in the amateur world, Henry stuff is sometimes highly regarded, but compared to the build quality of the RCAs, it was not that great. But they were there. That's what they were, and they worked. I must say, the tolerances in the commercial service are incredibly tight as to the output mask and spurious signals and harmonics and frequency tolerance, plus or minus 20 cycles. You've got to be on it. And they did that. They did that job. So that's what was in use. The fortunate thing for us was that they did not scrap the 50s vintage RCA transmitters, so we still had them there to eventually work on after we started working on the Henrys, and we thought, well, okay, this is going to be the easiest way to begin. The place had been abandoned for only 2 years, but open to the atmosphere. This is the transmitter site, obviously, in Bolinas. But we're finding standing water from condensation on the RF decks and the power supply decks. So we're saying, okay, this, standing water, salt water, and 6,000 volts, I need say no more. No. And so we would be drying and drying and drying and cleaning and cleaning and cleaning and drying and drying and cleaning. And then Tom and I would look at each other and say, well, what do you think? And okay, we're going to press the money button, bam-o. And there's this big flame shoots out the top. But we eventually restored all of those and then turned to, and I have to point out, this is not me. It is not I have certain technical competence, but the folks who are in our transmitter department are the best of the best. And they were able to bring these back to life and then turn to the RCAs, which had been abandoned for 10 years, if not longer. Yeah, about 10 years. You could not open the sliding doors. You couldn't turn the tuning controls. Wow. They were in that bad shape. Now they are all singing transmitters. They are in good shape. And then we went to the transmitter site that KFS used in Palo Alto, California, and they gave us the free reign of the place to get whatever historic stuff we could get. Mm-hmm. And we got 2 press wireless PW15 transmitters, 15 kilowatt point-to-point transmitters. and actually brought them to the site in Bolinas and moved them in, hooked them up, and one has been restored. It's on its original, that's the one that's signing the KFS call sign. And it turns out that's one of the transmitters I was keying on the last night. Didn't know it at the time. And that's on 12 megs, and then the second one is undergoing restoration. That'll be on 17 megs. So those are the oldest one. Those are 1942 transmitters. And they've got the flashing mercury vapor rectifiers as you're keying them, and they're really pretty good. I'm just while I'm talking to you, I'm going through, I think I've got some pictures of that, but go ahead. Well, if you have another question.
How much power are the different transmitters running? You mentioned the Henry was a 5K, I think.
Yeah, that's right. The authorization on the KPH license is up to 40,000 watts on some of the frequencies, some of the primary frequencies, and on the medium 500 and 426. But everything that we're running and what KPH was running in the last days is at 5 kilowatts, so lower power than they originally were using. Here's a shot, if I may. Here is Bill Maloney, and we were talking about Morse code and people who are skilled in it. I consider, and you can see the cubby holes up here for the keys.
Where each operator would keep their keys. Yeah.
Right. And so for those who are listening to the podcast, we've got Bill in the foreground, and he's got the control panel and the mill typewriter in front of him. He's got a Marconi Atalanta receiver to the left, and the HRO 500 behind him, the first of the solid state receivers the station used. But above the central panel is a cubby hole with, you can see a couple of bugs in there that guys have used. And he was just considered to be the best of the best. I considered myself to be pretty good on the Morse code key, but once I met the folks who did it for a job for 18, 20 years, I realized I had more to learn. And it's not just a matter of going fast, it's a matter of finesse and technique. And all those folks said, yeah, I'm pretty good. But, Bill Maloney, he was the guy. And one of the most beloved operators. He was a Quaker. He could have stayed out of the Second World War honorably and legally. He didn't choose that. He chose to be a radio officer on the Merchant Marine. And you probably know what the casualty rate in the Merch was during the Second World War. He was torpedoed. Ship torpedoed out from under him, but came back to KPH to be one of the most beloved operators. And so stories like that abound.
So were the guys who were the operators there, were any of them hams also, or was that too much of like a busman's holiday going home and operating HF?
It went both ways. This guy, Bill, was not a ham. Most of them were not hams. However, Warren Reese, who was the last transmitter technician at KPH and also a very good Morse operator, he would pound away for 8 hours at KPH and go home to his ham radio and pound away for 8 hours there, and then go to sleep for a while and come back and do it all over again. So he really loved it. And one of the things, let's see, I guess I'm kind of losing track here, but I think I'm sharing my screen. Am I not?
Not yet. You did before.
Not anymore.
Okay, let me just do that again, because I wanted to show this to you. So here's the Marconi Atalanta, and you see this little sticker on here. When we got there, we looked at every photo we could possibly find, including this one. And the Marconi Atalanta nowhere to be found. But there I was stumbling around in the dimly lit basement at a location not far from here, and I see on the floor of the basement, there it is.
Oh, wow.
So, and this is a flash photo, obviously. When I saw it, it was just a silhouette, a black silhouette, but I just knew what it was. And
you recognize that sticker on it.
well, the sticker is unambiguous.
Yeah, that's unique. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I didn't steal it, but I did take it, and it's
Important
now back,
safety, important distinction.
yes. So it's back home, as we like, and several things like that have happened. Sometimes somebody will come who's the son or now grandson of an operator here and said, Grandpa had this in the garage for 40 years. I think it came from the station. Do you want it? And of course, it's a wonderful piece of history that now we get to bring back. It's,
The funny thing, when I look at that receiver and the HRO 500, et cetera, for their time, those were, I guess they were good receivers, but I don't think of those as being like top-end commercial grade receivers.
Yeah, they were, though. These were not intended for the amateur market. These were enormously expensive, highly stable. On the Atalanta, you may have noticed that it was a band spread, the horizontal band spread dial, but that's all marine bands. That's not amateur bands. And it's the Atalanta is in typically lovely British design fashion, which I truly do love, a fan of British sports cars. The chassis is B+ above ground, so the chassis is hot. and
My
so
parents owned an MGA. I know all about that.
there you go. So you understand,
Yes.
And so why they did that, I'm sure it's very good reason. But
I think it's after 6 or 8 hours you would touch it and just like
well,
you
what they
wake
would
you
do
back up.
is heat up their sandwiches in the receivers. And there's the great saga of the melted cheese sandwich in the Collins 51J4. The guy was never forgiven for that.
Ooh.
It was
That
not
sounds
good.
smelly.
It was not good.
Down in the gearing.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my
You
gosh.
You don't want that.
Tell us a little bit about the antennas that were being used.
Okay, I'm just while I do that, pick up this picture, and this is,
that's great.
So you see the HRO, and over to the operator's right side is the 51J4, and the CR91s, RCA's wonderful receivers, the heaviest receiver per cubic volume ever. We have several of them, and holy mackerel, they're made out of steel, one end to the other. The antennas are, of course, the key point to the whole thing. At the transmitter site, the transmitting antennas, it's a single antenna for each transmitter. So we, at the moment, have more transmitters than we have antennas. For 4, 6, and 8 megs, it's what's called the double extended ZEP, which is what they call also a marine dipole. It's like a dipole. All of them is fed with open wire line, 600 ohm open wire line. And instead of being half a wavelength, they are, I think I have it right, as 0.62 wavelength. And that gives you gain and directionality. So you can imagine what the size of basically a dipole, an extended dipole, at 4 megs is. It's a good size antenna. For 12, 16, and 22 megs, it's a phased array, a wire array called an H/2. And this also is directional and gives gain. So it's a good, very good transmitting antennas. For the receive antenna, we had the benefit of a lot of the point-to-point antennas were still there. So multiple V-beams and stuff like that, they all fell into disrepair, unfortunately. And the antenna situation is the biggest challenge we have. We can repair just about any transmitter, but the antennas are very difficult and expensive. Well, what we have now is what's called a TCI 530. It's an omnidirectional antenna. It was put in by Aeronautical Radio when they had a receive site at the Point Reyes receive location. And when they moved out of there, I was able to negotiate with them and saying, look, don't worry about that big antenna over in the field. We'll take care of that for you.
We'll take it down for you.
Covered.
Yeah. You can just abandon that in place, and that'll be just fine. So that's what we're using now. This is a photo of Warren Reese. He's the guy that would go home and pound away on his ham radio. He's in front of one of the 2 rows of the Henry transmitters, the HF 5000Ds. And he's got his standard uniform on, same thing every day, short sleeve shirt, bow tie, and in the pocket.
Pencil protector, yeah.
That's right. And in there is also, I guarantee you, a dental floss holder. Invariably had very good dentition. So but he helped us tremendously because even though Tom and I and others who joined us in the early days were steeped in the tradition of old radios and were used to operating old equipment, this was something else again. This was not an easy thing to get your mind around, and so he was able to really help us tremendously. And here is me sweating bullets, sending one of those final messages. This is down at the KFS transmitter site. And we commemorate that date, July 12th, 1999, every year on our so-called Night of Nights event. So.
And what is Night of Nights? That's something that one of my CW Ops instructors told me about. And it's a very special event for you guys. Tell us about that.
We felt that when people were telling us, well, you can't do this. This is never going to work. And what are you bothering for? And it's just beeps in the air anyway. So who cares? And we didn't feel that way at all. We thought that we wanted to show that indeed we thought about it deeply enough that we wanted to bring this back to life and continue to do it. And so every year since then, on July 12th, 1999, X number of years, however many years it is since 1999, and 1 minute, the station goes back on the air. Of course, it's on the air every weekend anyway, but on this particular night, 1 minute after midnight, Greenwich Mean Time, the voice comes back on the air. And we send these commemorative messages by folks who have written in, and they give us these essentially one-way telegrams to send to folks like, this is for my dad who was a radioman during the war. We love you, Dad. And that very, very moving, very moving. And we get back these letters. In fact, in the early days, I can still remember one that came from a guy in the UK, and he was, this spidery handwriting of an older gentleman. And he said, I heard your station on every ocean of the world. I never expected to hear it again. And here but I was listening late at night, my time, with the headphones on, and I hear your signal coming up out of the static over the dome of the earth. And it just meant so much to me. That's really the whole thing right there.
That's
right
awesome.
There. That's why we're doing it.
And I've placed, for those who want to read more about Night of Nights, I've placed a link in the show notes to an article. I think Thomas shared that article with us before we began recording. And it's a wonderful article with some great photos in it, so I encourage you all to find the show notes and click on that and read up more about it. And I think I might be able to find a Night of Nights recording that was shared with me by my CW Ops instructor some time ago. I can't remember the gal's name, the operator, but he cited this as a very fine example of code.
That female operator at the KPH end, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be Denise Stoops, and she was the first female operator. I remember walking into the station because I would visit there periodically, and I look at position 4, and here's this person sitting there with 2 braids down the back. I say, hey, guys, there's a girl in here. Do you know that? She used a chrome bug.
Yes.
And she had these long red nails and jangling silver bracelets, and it was all working together all at the same. And she had that rolling motion too that you were talking about.
Yeah.
On the bug, and we have video of her doing that. She was very well known for that. This is the upstairs of the transmitter site in Bolinas. For those who are listening to the podcast, we're looking down the main causeway or alleyway, I guess you would say, and able to see the RCA transmitters from the 1950s that were left in place. And in the photo here, they're turned on. So this is after we have done a lot of restoration. And then we can also see the rows of the Henry transmitters. These are beige transmitters in about 5-foot racks. And they have coaxial output. The other ones are all balanced output, antenna output. But luckily for us, they kept the open wire feeders out from the building out to the antennas. So for the RCAs with the balanced output, we can just connect those directly to the output of the transmitter. And for the Henrys, they have what they call window boxes, which we would call antenna tuners, that transition between the 50 ohm unbalanced line and the 600 ohm balanced line. So this was how we.
So the 600 ohm ladder line would come into the building, and those parallel wires would go to the transmitter directly?
Yeah, that's right. It's hard to see here, but overhead there's a matrix of parallel lines, and you kind of clip onto them and bring them down to the transmitter.
Did they ever run voice traffic?
Not in the ship-to-shore service, but during the war, the station was taken over by the Office of War Information, and we are lucky to have there's very little information about the war period, but we do have a floor diagram showing several transmitters that were voice transmitters and were used to broadcast propaganda, U.S. propaganda across the Pacific. So in that sense, yes.
But there's no marine ship-to-shore telephone kind of service?
Right. Well, not by us, but by the station next door, KMI. That was the AT&T station.
Okay.
And they did the telephone, radio telephone connections. These are the two PW15s that we brought in from Palo Alto. And as you can see, it was a bit of a task, but we were very lucky.
We're only seeing your
PowerPoint.
The PowerPoint, yeah.
There we go. Sorry about that. And you do see the transmitters now, I hope?
Nope.
No.
You're not sharing a screen at all right now.
Okay, well then I need to do better.
Let's try this again.
Yep, let's try it again indeed. How are we doing there?
There we go.
Wow.
Okay.
Big
technology.
transmitters on the back of a truck.
Yeah, that's right. Big transmitters back of a lowboy. And it was very exciting, I have to say, to bring these things up there. And here's the one that's installed. And I think the next slide, for those who are listening to the podcast, we're looking face on of the PW15 transmitters.
Wow.
Or one of them. And you'll notice that the tuning controls, or I will describe the tuning controls, are chrome crank wheels. And I'm in favor of any transmitter that has chrome crank wheels to tune it. And you can see the mercury vapor rectifiers and thyrotrons that flash away as the thing actually transmits.
Wow.
And if
they act as little VU meters.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
and yeah, you can see them moving.
So,
that is
flashing.
so cool.
Folks listening heard these are all air-cooled transmitters, so you're hearing the blowers. There were water-cooled transmitters on the site. They were all gone by the time we got there, so we didn't have a chance to restore one of those. But we were very lucky that the PCB transformer oil had been removed from these and replaced. So we were able to slide them in under the nose of the Park Service and not have too much trouble.
So now if we kind of fast forward to today, what sort of things, you mentioned before that there's occasionally commercial, there's broadcasts and so forth. What other amateur radio related activity is happening now at the station?
The amateur side is very rewarding, and it was done so that we could have an interface with our colleagues in the amateur community who wanted to work an actual coast station. So we operate it just as a coast station, except it's on an amateur channel, and it's fixed. It's the Henry transmitters that we were looking at earlier, fixed frequencies, so you always know where the station will be. And we operate it. In fact, when I'm operating, I actually send a wheel, and that confuses some of the guys, but the ones who really understand, who get it, they really like that. And then it's a somewhat of a typical amateur contact. One of the most rewarding things for me when I'm operating is when I hook up with somebody who's obviously another professional operator. This would be, usually a ship-to-shore or coast station operator, and you know immediately just by the crisp operating style. And that's great fun to talk to those folks. And we have there's just a standard list of folks who are always there, and who really just, we know them all, and how you doing, great to see you, and then some new folks who haven't contacted us before, and then we maybe give them the spiel, yeah, we're here at this coast station, and that kind of stuff, and also accept traffic and put it into the national traffic system if somebody wants to do that. So it's great fun, and there's a fair amount of pile-up activity on 18 megs seems to be our most productive frequency. 14 is also good. I know that we ran into a situation on 18, and it hasn't happened in the last couple of years, but just on that one frequency was confusing our operators because we were hearing our own signal, but it was coming around the earth, so it was, it was delayed, and so it took a minute. What is this?
Oh my gosh!
So that was great fun, but it's really very rewarding because the folks who contact us are sort of have it in the blood, like we do.
So there's some other cool things that you guys are doing there. So the Enigma challenge was something that popped up recently. Tell us about that.
Yes, I really should have the colleague Kevin, who is here with us, to really describe it, but because it was his brainchild. But we just thought, gee, we, as a commercial station, we have no restrictions about transmitting encrypted text.
So it is that Enigma.
The Enigma is a machine cipher that was used by the Germans during World War II. It's a very famous machine. It's either has rotors in it that are intricately wired within the rotor, plus the rotors would advance at certain speeds, plus there was a pegboard to further scramble the input and output, and the rotors could be changed in their position, so they had a virtually infinite set of positions that would encode these 5-letter groups. That's what the Enigma would put out. And these are very collectible these days, of course. And also the famous story of how Rajewski and his code breakers in Poland were first able to make an inroad into this. And
I want to thank you for acknowledging the Polish cryptographers that were doing this instead of giving everything to Alan Turing. Alan Turing was brilliant. He's not the one who broke Enigma. He's the one who automated the breaking of Enigma.
You got it. And
yes.
I see your finger giving me the...
I'm very adamant about this.
But you're right, and I intentionally mentioned him and his group, and I'm sure you know the story of when the French and the British visited, not knowing any of this and not having made any headway against the Enigma machine. They visited him in Poland, which had the greatest mathematics of the time, and they were astounded to find that this they were making headway in decoding these encrypted messages, and then they showed them 3 Enigma machines that they had made themselves, and they said, "These are for you," and the British and the French were a little chagrined about this. And of course, you will remember that while this is going on, the panzers are lining up against the border of Poland. And Rejewski very graciously said, "Well, of course, our motivation may be a little greater than yours." And not long after, on September 1st, 1939, we know what happened. But yes, so we did both Alan Turing at Bletchley Park and his group, and also the National Cash Register Company here in the States had an improved four-rotor machine. Great story in a book called The Secret of Building 26 about that. So that was the famous machine in encoding and decoding machine. So we said, well, we can send encrypted messages. Let's send these and see who can decode them. And we would give them the settings and so forth. And folks would do that. Some of them on actual Enigma machines, others on emulators. And that's turned out to be the most popular event that we do. Folks really like that. And we also had sent, I think one year was encrypted with the M209, which is a much less sophisticated U.S. machine. In fact, I have one in my collection. But also an just not electro at all, completely mechanical machine, and we sent it in that format. But it really is popular. We do it once or twice a year, plenty of fanfare, so folks get all the information that they need, and we send a special certificate with a gold seal on it. Say, yes, you special agent, you have done your job.
I love that.
It's so cool. So apparently, I didn't know this. You can get an Enigma emulator on the web, or there's a website that has such a thing?
Yes, probably more than one.
Of course.
Yeah.
So now, when you would send, yes, Mark?
So you guys are sending out encrypted Enigma messages and waiting for people to decrypt them. I have heard, I have not actually witnessed, that GCHQ
yes.
and RSGB do the same thing, where GCHQ in London will transmit an Enigma encrypted message, but not give the rotor settings, and let the folks at the RSGB in Bletchley Park receive the message, and then let the docents at Bletchley go through the process of creating the recipe and looking for the collisions and doing the whole thing and plugging it into a bomb and letting the wheels churn until they get viable keys, and then test them and see if they can decrypt the message.
Well, I hadn't heard of that. That's fantastic if they're doing that. We're going to follow up on that and find out about that. That is great.
Yes.
So they're using the stuff at Bletchley to decode them. Oh, that's unbelievably great.
Yeah.
GCHQ, if I'm not mistaken, they may still do this, but at least they did probably a decade ago. They actually posted like a challenge to everyone to decode something that they send out. They send a bit of encrypted data and ask people to decrypt it. And I happen to have a friend, a really dear friend when we lived in the UK. He and his wife, well, he loves his whole pastime is decrypting things. He loves to decrypt stuff, and the GCHQ would actually they would make people job offers on this. They're like, if you get this, you've passed the first stage of joining us. Come talk to us. We're interested. And it's really cool. I haven't looked to see if they've done that again, but they do throw out some really interesting challenges like that. I loved it when you had the announcement for the Enigma event, though. It reminded me of that. I remember posting it on the SW Welling post because I wanted that to be far and wide. I think it's so cool.
Well, and friend of the show, Randy K7AGE, recently posted his video showing how he received the Enigma message. So I put a link to that in the show notes.
That's right.
And did he use a piece of software to decode it, or what did he do with it?
I haven't watched the whole video. I see some little screen grabs that involve FL Digi, and then some screen grabs that say, and here's how you decode it and decrypt it, and then another screen grab showing some software thing. I don't know. Watch the video. It's only 18 minutes. And being Randy's video, of course, it's incredibly educational.
That is really, really cool. So this is neat because you get a bunch of nerd crossover here. Like what ham doesn't love this kind of stuff, and I'm sure you get a lot of other people who are not hams who are interested in this sort of thing. This seems like a great Hackaday article. I wonder if they ever did one on it. Seems like a perfect topic for that.
Not that I know of. No.
So that is really great. So this happens once or twice a year.
Yeah, that's right, and it's a fair amount of work to pull it all together on the part of the folks who. Kevin McGrath is the name of the guy who really is the spark plug on this. He's also a rocketeer, so he's out at the salt flats shooting off giant rockets when he's not busy with his Enigma machine. So so many interesting folks with
Yes.
like everybody here. As I'm hearing what you're all into, it's really great to be among a crowd like that.
So there's other things that I kind of tripped across. I think I found somewhere that there's a web SDR that you guys host.
Yeah, that's right. We have a bunch of them, and these are the Kiwi receivers. If I guess some folks, okay. And we've wanted to do that for a long time. And at another speaking engagement, a guy some years ago now approached me and said he said, well, I know how to do this, and I would like to do it. And so we have a brace of multiple receivers up there, and they really do perform. They on the HF end of it is connected to the TCI 530 antenna. The real outstanding one is connected to the Marconi T LF and MF antenna. And that was an interesting thing because the medium frequency marine band was really the moneymaker for a long time before HF became adopted. And the Marconi T antenna, which is a deceptively simple antenna, just a horizontal wire and a down lead, but engineered so it works specifically in those frequency ranges. We had it set up, or the station had it set up with LC filters on each of the working frequencies in the medium frequency band to eliminate broadcast interference, because the multicouplers were homemade and they would go nonlinear at the drop of a hat. Once we improved the multicouplers, we were able to remove those LC connectors, and we completely rebuilt the antenna at a cost of $80,000, I'll point out.
Wow.
And all of that went into brush clearance and aligning the poles and putting in new guys and stuff like the antenna. It's just wire, that was the easy part. That thing, anybody among this group here tonight or the listeners who is into listening in the low and medium frequencies, this is the one. It is astounding how well it works. And the information about it is on our website, radiomarine.org, radiomarine.org, and folks are more than welcome to give that a try.
I just pulled it up. And I look at a fair amount of spectrum, and you can just see how clean this is for being there at that site, and how big the signals are way down in the band.
Yeah, I don't know if you're down to the real low frequencies of the submarine transmissions, but like around 25 kC or so down in there.
Sorry, that's audio. That's not RF.
Well, if your ears detect RF, then you will hear it.
Oh,
but
that's crazy. This is crazy.
Yeah,
it's wonderful.
It's truly impressive, and of course, it's at a dead quiet location. That's why it was chosen, and with the proper multicoupler and these good receivers, it's impressive. So everybody's invited for that.
So you mentioned that the antenna restoration was 80 grand. So how do you guys pay for this stuff? Is it through donations or grants, or what's the secret?
Yeah, the secret is being miserly, I think. It's a combination of funding from our own donors and from the National Park Service. We are very good at restoring and running a vintage coast station. We are notably less good at fundraising, and yet there's enough folks around the world who have this in their soul that they do donate. And we are miserly in the sense that this is, we are very careful on what we spend. So the 80,000 actually did come from the National Park Service in an earlier restoration of antennas down at the transmit site. I think it was something like 100,000 from the Park Service, and we were able to kick in $40,000 or $50,000 from our own coffers. So it can be a combination of contributions, and we're very, very lucky to have a guy who runs a contracting and antenna business, commercial antenna business, who basically grew up at the site in Bolinas and is a good friend and a wonderful worker and is familiar with all these kind of antennas and wooden poles, and you can't find anybody to work on this anymore. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that we not only can occasionally have the funds, but we also have the people who know what to do with those funds.
So Richard, maybe this is a good point to say, if people want to support this, and we would like to encourage them to kick in some money to help pay for all this stuff, I don't suppose you would take donations, would you?
Well, we would happily do that, and there is a donation button on our website at radiomarine.org. We are a 501c3 nonprofit corporation, so that donation would be tax deductible. And we also have a newsletter that is highly regarded. By the way, the editor of our electronic newsletter is I'm sure is the only in captivity PhD Morse code slinging Franciscan friar. And so,
what a great combination.
And he's a wonderful Morse operator, a wonderful guy to begin with. But he's kind of like in the Army. He has to go where they assign him. So he's over in the UK right now. We're hoping he'll be back soon.
I've got a digital friend, a guy named Father Robert Balasaire. He's a Jesuit Catholic priest, and I like to say that I know the Pope's IT guy because he is literally the Pope's IT guy.
Yeah.
And he's been over in the Vatican, I think, going on 8 years of a 2-year project. So, yeah.
Yep. So whoops. So the newsletter is something that you can subscribe to from the website as well, and people do seem to think it's pretty good.
So if people want to visit, when is the station available for visitors, and can visitors operate if they just drop in, or how does that work?
It works essentially as you've just described, except that being part of the national government, we are closed at the moment because of the government closure.
Oy.
But absent that, we are open every Saturday at the receive site. And yes, those who have either a commercial license or a ham license are welcome to sit the circuit. We will provide a key if you don't have one, and headphones and all that, set you up. It takes a little bit of getting used to because it's not like a normal ham setup, but then off you go. And I have a special stamp. We endorse your license with the Great Seal of the Maritime Radio Historical Society, and then another stamp saying satisfactory operation as a operator at KPH. And for those who have commercial, and you can still get a commercial telegraph license. As a matter of fact, we give the test for it. And so my great joke that I tell every time, I get the guy's license and, he bows and I stamp the thing and then I say, and here you are, and this is good for employment at any U.S. coast station. And that's how it used to be. You took your license and your key and your headphones and you could get a job anywhere. So this was.
So I can tell the expression on Thomas's face is like, I got to get out there and do this.
Oh, it 100%.
Well,
yeah.
you'd be well. And the other thing I wanted to add about, thank you for mentioning that, about visiting, is the normal spot is the receive site at Point Reyes. But since all you and the listeners to the podcast, since you're special, we would be happy to make an arrangement for you to visit the transmit site as well. That's not generally open to the public, but we can, with an advance notice, you would be happy to join us in the morning for services of the Church of the Continuous Wave, and we will. And we will feed you on pastry and coffee, and everybody gets to tell high radio tales. And so, yes.
I'm sold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sold. I'm looking at my frequent flyer miles right now.
This is one of the setups that we did at the Marconi receive site, the original one, up in the town of Marshall, 1914. So we built these consoles to allow us to operate and control the transmitters in Bolinas and then set up the receivers here. Here you see the Marconi Atalanta. This is one that I bought to sit in for the one that was originally found.
So before the internet, was all of this remote operating done over the telephone?
Interesting point. The answer is sort of yes. It was originally done through open wire line, and then was done through an aerial lead-shielded overhead cable. That I got to see. That was still in service when I first got there. And then once the Sitor operation evolved, it was a T1 link between the transmit and receive sites, but also to WCC on Cape Cod, where we remote controlled that station from the Point Reyes station.
Wow.
Of course, when we got there, all of that was gone. So we are able to cram the control circuits, which are very narrow shift, audio frequency shift keying circuits. The terminal equipment is exactly as it always was. And we're able to cram that into a voice grade dial-up line and make that work. We don't know how long it's going to be before that line either disappears or, in a way almost worse, gets a little delay in it, because that drives an operator nuts. You can't, you're trying to, it's like hearing your voice delayed when you're doing a recording.
Yeah.
But right now, for several years, we've been successful in doing that.
Boy, we've covered a lot of terrain here. Does anybody have any other questions for Richard?
I'm just in awe at like how I didn't know. Yeah, I've known about KPH for a long time. I had no idea really what the genesis of it was, like what you did to get it together, to make it a reality, to marry it with the Park Service, and just all that you're involved in, and how this works. This is absolutely fascinating to me.
Well,
thank you for
that.
all that you do, all the time that you put into this, and all of your volunteers.
Well, you can imagine that we think we're the luckiest radio squirrels that exist. We can't believe how lucky we are. But I really appreciate you saying that.
So, Kevin, I'm curious, have you had a chance to go operate at the station?
I did not have a chance to operate, yeah, but it is definitely, as fun as it is hearing about all this, it is definitely a different experience visiting there and talking to Richard in person. I really encourage anybody really to go, and if you're trying to convince somebody else that it's a good trip to make out to California to come visit it, it's a beautiful area by Point Reyes Station, lots of great food, a very quaint small town, and you could just nonchalantly head to the beach, and on the way there, you just happen to pass the radio station with it's just a beautiful driveway with cypress trees. It's a tunnel of cypress trees. So, that could be an encouraging way to convince somebody to take a trip out here and
Convince a
just
partner.
happen to come. Yeah.
And it's a POTA entity.
Is it?
Yes, that's right. And due to your inspiration, I actually did, put together a little POTA outfit and actually activated the Marconi receive site at one point. So
Neat.
Wonderful.
Wow. So, Richard, is there anything that... Oh, go ahead, Mark.
Where do we learn more about the Enigma stuff?
Just look it up anywhere on the web. Or if you mean in general, it's all over the place. If you mean our operation, it might still be up on there under the events section of our website.
Okay. And remind us again what that website is?
It's Radio Marine, RadioMarine.org.
Mm-hmm.
And I have that link listed in the show notes.
Very good. Thank you.
So, Richard, is there anything... Oh, jeez. Excuse me?
Is Mike Leska involved in this?
Yes, Mike Leska is a Coast Guard radioman, the last of the true breed.
Yeah.
Exceedingly bright young guy. And on our first few nights of night, he was able to get NMC, which is the Coast Guard station right next door to us, to reactivate on Morse code. And that was an undertaking because they had abandoned Morse some number of years ago, but there was with enough cliff leads and enough knowledge, they were able to get it back on.
And Mike's got all of that knowledge and more. Mike is a good friend of mine from college.
Ah, okay.
Well,
Yeah, so Mike Leska, I can't remember if he lived here before, but I knew him from the Cal Poly Amateur Radio Club back in the 90s. He's a good friend of mine.
Well, you know what a brilliant guy he is.
And how, yes.
Well, so on the website under RHS events, the first link is Mike Leska's Enigma tutorial.
Right,
that
right.
is exactly the tool that I saw the screen grab of from Randy's video. So
that's what made me exclaim Mike Leska's name. Wow, Mike, if you're listening, how you doing, man? Give me a call.
And
Well, why don't you send him a message? Just encode it first.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. and by the way, if you this is what I learned from my cryptography friend. The last thing that you want to do if you're sending someone a message that likes to break codes is email them just a random set of letters and numbers. Like have something generate perfectly random strings of things. They said that's the worst thing.
If you want to be a jerk,
that's like a horrible thing to do to somebody like that. He said it's also a really good way to make sure that your email gets monitored. So I was on, I just looked up radiomarine.org because I was looking for the donate button, and for the people who want to donate, I just put in a little donation myself. You go down to the main page and you kind of scroll down, and there's a part down there that says help support the MRHS, and that donate button's down there.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. So, Richard, is there anything that we missed that we should cover, or do you think we've done it pretty well?
Well, I think you've done it quite well. If we have a minute, I would like to share just a couple of photos. Do we have time for that?
Sure.
We have all the time you want to take.
Oh, well.
Apparently, you're unschooled in the way of the Ham Radio Workbench. We can go on until we're done.
Oh, okay. Well, I just wanted to mention, we talked maybe in a somewhat boastful manner about restoring these 1940s and 1950s and 1990s transmitters. The most complex transmitter at the site is what's called a T3, and as you see, these are physically and certainly electronically different from any other. These were independent sideband transmitters in the point-to-point service, so you'd get 2 channels out of 1 frequency. And these are exceedingly complex mechanically and electrically, and not only that, they were in horrific shape. Here's a shot of just how one small section of the things looked inside. Wow. And it was, your heart just sinks when you see stuff like this. We were very lucky to get the attendance, the support of a group of engineers from Hewlett-Packard, currently employed, mostly retired, and they joined us as a group of guys, and we're doing projects, and they said, well, we enjoy these projects, but we'd like to get something we can stick our teeth into. And so I said, well, okay, here's a
challenge accepted.
They did accept it, and here's the deck, just one small part of this transmitter. This is one of the RF decks, and this is the after. This is, and it was like that throughout the transmitter. Here is the RF deck restored, and there was so much more in it.
Looks
and
immaculate.
they did that. It's unbelievable. I mean, and it's parts that you will never see again underneath this deck, for example. There's not a tie wrap anywhere. It's all laced. All the wiring is laced, just as it was.
Of course it is.
Of course it is. And so that if people come and want to study this after we're gone, they're going to see it as it was.
That's a 9319 tube. Those pull on your prior slide. Those pull, I want to say 280 amperes or something on the grid or the anode. They're massive tubes. They're about the size of a bowling ball. I had one just like it in my collection for a while.
Well, you are right.
They're humongous.
And so here it is being tuned up by Steve Pizar.
We've got your PowerPoint slide deck up again.
Yep, here we go. How about now? Looking good now?
Nope. Not yet.
Not up there
Not
yet.
You'd think I'd get this after.
Meh.
Couple
It's
hours.
hard to switch those windows between.
There it is. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
So as you see, it's been polished within an inch of its life, and it is these were converted after the point-to-point service ended in 1973. These were converted to Morse code operations, and in 2013 for our Night of Nights, we were going to inaugurate it, and here is the superintendent of the Point Reyes National Seashore, ready to press the money button on this thing. And here's me, and I'm sure you can see the thought bubble up here saying, please God, don't let this catch on fire.
Hope it works.
I noticed you stood back a little ways.
I was back, but
nobody else did though.
There was no need because it was perfect, and
it looks gorgeous.
Is there a chicken stick around your waist to pull you out of the way?
Well, you see the Jesus stick up here, right? On this other transmitter. Yeah. So we don't have chicken sticks. We do have Jesus sticks, though.
Okay.
And of course it's been working. And this is on our 22 meg channel, so that gets out into the South Pacific quite nicely.
Wow.
Now, how much power is this putting out?
It's putting out about 5 kilowatts.
And to give people who are listening along some scale, and this is really one of those podcasts, please go to the video and take a look at it.
Yeah.
What we're looking at, this 5 kilowatt transmitter is 3 commercial racks wide and 7 feet tall, and undoubtedly 4 feet deep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and when you come and visit, and yes, I do hope people get to see the video, but when you come and visit, we'll open the door of the back of an unrestored one, and if this one is not online, open the back door of this one, and you'll just see it's like it came from the factory. It's astounding. Took 3 years and 3,000 man-hours to do it, but these guys did it.
That's amazing.
Bonkers.
Right, Good bonkers.
Yes.
Good bonkers.
So I just wanted to show you guys that.
That's cool.
Before we go.
This has been so much fun. I've really thoroughly enjoyed this.
The only 500-watt transmitter I ever worked on, I was in high school, so that was decades ago, at least one. And it was, 20 inches wide and 7 feet tall, and the glass envelope, the RF final was, 2.5 feet tall. And my job, it was the backup transmitter for AM 900 CHML, Canada's first AM station. And my job was to get the dust off of it in case it was ever needed. Such jobs were given to high school students on Work Experience Week. Seeing these big, huge transmitters at KPH, it's interesting to see how these things have changed over the years. It's awesome.
This is what you'll see when you come to visit the receive site. You see the 6 positions. This is the main position. This is Friar King over here. Position 6 is usually what I use, but I was standing up on the ladder taking the photo at the time. This is Kevin, who is the guy who is behind the crypto event. So plenty of stuff to see, and we really do hope you'll be able to join us at some point.
Well, that's just amazing. So,
that's awesome.
Richard, thank you so much for sharing this with us, and even much more than that, thanks for all of the passion and all the time and the effort, and being one of the guys who's really the catalyst around pulling this together to keep it around for generations to come. I think that's just so important. When things get old and there's no practical use for it anymore, things are often thrown away, and then you look back years later and regret and wish that you could have done something, and you guys really stepped up and did something. So
well, that's the danger period, when it just becomes garbage. That's when you lose this historic stuff. But we got
it becomes garbage
lucky.
Before it becomes vintage.
Before
exactly.
It becomes vintage. That's right.
Yeah.
So we just hit it right. Our timing couldn't have been better.
So that's really amazing, and I'd love to get down there sometime and operate. So any last comments from you guys, Vince?
I was just, at the very beginning, you started describing walking into the room, and it was like a time capsule, and you were still hearing beeps and boops, and that's so cool to see what you become of it. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and of course, we're having the time of our lives. I mean, we take this seriously, very seriously, but we're having the time of our lives there.
Mark, any last comments?
No. It's just
cool,
such a great story. Yeah.
The good news is it's not that far a drive for you. I mean,
no,
it's
not
a drive, but not that far.
And it sounds like you've got to reconnect with a college buddy in your future.
That's right. Exactly. I'll have to give Mike a call.
Thomas, how about you? Any last comments?
Yeah, again, I love this. I am all about radio history. The only thing I've ever been to that really compares to this, besides little AM stations and stuff I've been to, is the Voice of America site in Greenville, North Carolina. And, big transmitters, it's a 2,000-acre site. It's gigantic with big curtain arrays and stuff. But this, to see, that's an international broadcasting station. To see and hear what it's like to get one of these maritime stations up and running from, what would have been its death. The radio world just owes you guys so big time to have that energy to make it happen and put all the pieces together, get the volunteers together. And I get it that it's like a dream thing to do, but boy, we're so glad you were there when the opportunity was right to strike that iron. It's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Kevin, I want to thank you for pulling this together and making it happen, and being the impetus to actually get together with Richard and have this great conversation. So I want to thank you for that. Do you have any last comments before we wrap up?
Oh, you're welcome. No, thank you for giving Richard a chance to share it with even more people. So hope he gets more visitors at the station.
And don't forget the donations.
That's right.
All right. Thank you so much, Richard. Thanks for all you do. And we'll... Excuse me. We'll catch up with everybody in a couple weeks. Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure for me. Thank you all.
So from all of us at the Ham Radio Workbench, 73.
7 3s.
Be good humans.